The solution that he mentioned was, if you're a terrorist, I'm going to kill you, right? And, his definition of a terrorist is very much scary.
He said my definition of a terrorist is scary. What I said was those that attack Israel and commit terrorism. Those that want to commit acts of terrorism to undermine the Jewish state, they can die. And I really have no problem saying that. That's what I define as a terrorist. So when he said Nick's definition of terrorist is scary, if he agrees with that, if what's scary is defined as terrorist by somebody that commits terrorism and attacks the state of Israel to undermine it, then he's proving my point. In fact, he actually changed my mind a little bit. Now I don't trust any of the fucking Arabs because I thought this guy was actually somewhat moderate, and he's telling me that it's scary to define terrorists as people that attack Israel and do terrorism. I believe him.
Opened us up about Nick and about this subject. All right. So I think the question here is not whether the two-state solution is currently thriving. I need to make that very clear. It's not about is the two-state solution currently thriving, because it clearly is not thriving, right? The question is whether it has died or whether it has been delayed, right? Now, I will argue that it has been delayed because despite decades of the setbacks, it still remains the only realistic sort of framework that is capable of ending the conflict that we have. Now, I want to start with a simple observation. If the two-state solution is dead, what exactly replaced it, right? Is it a one-state solution? Because that would mean that you would have millions of Palestinians becoming citizens of that same state. And we all know a large segment of the Israeli society reject that because they fear losing that sort of Jewish character of the state, right? So what else do we have in our hands? Expulsion, ethnic cleansing. That is neither morally acceptable, nor is it even politically achievable, right? I can make the argument they even tried, right? But it's not politically achievable. Now, what else do we have? Permanent occupation, status quo. That is not a solution. And that is basically managing the conflict sort of indefinitely. And I would reckon there are parties that would rather have that. So I think that when people say the two-state solution is dead, they are usually describing the current reality of it, or they're not describing a viable sort of alternative to it, right? So let's kind of address the issue of a very important issue that I would like to talk about, which is the settlements and the West Bank. So I have a simple question here. Was the occupation of the West Bank a permanent land grab, or was it originally intended as a sort of security measure following the war? And this question is really for Nick. Do you think that this is a permanent land grab, right? Or is it, originally intended as a security measure following the wars when Israel took the West Bank or occupied the West Bank? Because, the answer to that really does matter. Because if it was always a permanent land grab, then peace was never possible to begin with. And if it was not a land grab and was originally viewed as some sort of negotiable territory, then the principle of land for peace still remains available. I think that history does suggest that land for peace is not a fantasy. Israel withdrew from the Sinai after the peace treaty with Egypt. Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005, during Sharon. So whether one agrees with those sort of decisions that were made, those draws, or they do not agree, these decisions demonstrate a very important, crucial point that I want to make. Israel has surrendered territory before. They have given territory before, right? And they did that when they believed peace and security could actually be achieved, right? And I believe that everybody can agree on that, Israelis, Palestinians, and everyone. So that means that the concept itself is not dead. What has happened instead is a sort of collapse of a trust, right? Palestinians doubt that the state will ever, materialize. Israelis increasingly sort of doubt that the territorial concessions will bring security to them. So the result of this is a political paralysis, right? But again, as a physician, I'll tell you, paralysis is not death, right? And people often confuse the two. So there's another reason I actually reject that the two-state solution is dead. And it is the overwhelming majority of governments around the world, including the United States, by the way, officially, that still support the two-state solution. We know that the international consensus has not changed. Arab states officially support it. We have the 2002 even peace initiative, Saudi peace initiative, later Arab peace initiative. The European states officially support it, the two-state solution. The United States officially supports the two-state solution. The United Nations officially support the two-state solution. So one may argue that many of these actors have, failed to meaningfully sort of advance it, and I would agree. But failure to implement that policy is not really the evidence that the policy itself is dead. Right? It is evidence that the political actors have chosen sort of not to prioritize it. So there's a difference between these two, being prioritizing it and being it, having it dead. And finally, I would argue that the two-state solution remains in the interest of both the peoples, the Palestinians and the Israelis. For the Palestinians, it offers their internationally recognized sovereign self-determination, and for the Israelis, it offers the possibility of remaining both a Jewish state and a democratic state while achieving a long-term regional integration, and finally becoming actually the sanctuary for the Jews around the world that they would actually want. So the tragedy of this conflict is really not that peace is impossible. I think it is that both sides have really spent decades becoming convinced that peace is impossible. And those are not the same thing. And I would reckon the two-state solution is not dead. It is delayed, and it is delayed by distrust. It is delayed by political incentives. It is delayed by extremists on both sides. But until someone can present a more realistic, achievable, internationally acceptable alternative, again, until someone can present a more realistic, achievable, internationally accepted alternative, then the two-state solution remains the only viable endgame. And therefore, it remains very much alive. Thank you, Ahmed.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Nick Matau.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect, thank you. First, I want to say salam to the moderator Ahmed and also to Dr. Hota, and thank you guys so much for having me on my first X Space debates. I really like that. Thank you. So first off, good evening, everyone. Tonight's debate, I would say, is not about whether a two-state solution would be nice. It's not about whether it would be ideal. It's not even about whether people should want it. The question is whether it is actually achievable in the real world, not just on paper. And my position is simple. The two-state solution is effectively dead for the foreseeable future at minimum, if not permanently, not because people stopped talking about it, not because they didn't prioritize it, not because Saudi Arabia stopped supporting it or did. Not even because diplomats stopped writing papers about it. It is dead because the conditions required to make it work no longer exist. And I want to be very clear. I'm not saying peace is impossible. I'm not saying Palestinians shouldn't have the rights to peace. I don't really think that's particularly even a right in a sense, but of course I want peace. But I don't believe peace actually comes from the absence of attacks. I believe peace comes from the absence of threat. Furthermore, I'm not saying that Israel should have this sort of ruling apartheid idea that a lot of pro-Palestinians believe over the Palestinians forever. I am saying that the specific model known as the two-state solution has become practically unworkable under current realities. And the reason is simple. Peace agreements are not made by slogans. They're made by governments, institutions, populations, security arrangements that can actually enforce them. And so we have to start with the most basic question. Who exactly would sign this agreement? Would it be Mahmoud Abbas? He's now in the 20th so year of a 4-year presidential term. Would it be Hamas? Hamas does not recognize Israel's legitimacy. Or would it be the Palestinian Islamic Jihad? Would it be Saudi Arabia? Would it be Qatar? Egypt? Who actually speaks for the Palestinians today with the authority to sign a permanent agreement and, more importantly, enforce it? I think the answer is nobody, not nobody permanently. And that is the first problem. You cannot create a state when there is no unified governing authority capable of enforcing the agreement. The second problem is security, which I find to actually be, in my personal sense, I find that to be more important than the argument of even stability. Stability can be achieved by many different ways. Even you can argue you can do evil things to create stability, but that doesn't make it right. Security is more important for me, and the security of the Israeli state is also more important to me. That doesn't mean other things are not important. It just simply means that that is more important in my argument. October 7th fundamentally changed Israeli public opinion, even in the left wing, even in the most peaceful Israelis that even had, I would argue, suicidal empathy. Before October 7th, support for a two-state solution was already weak. After October 7th, millions of Israelis watched armed terrorists cross the border, massacre civilians, kidnap hostages, and launch the deadliest attack in Israel's history. Now, I'm not fully sure on what Dr. Hota's arguments are. I actually just found out about him when we set up this debate, and I'm actually very excited because from just what I've heard, he has different opinions, and it's not going to be the same type of argument. So I assume, but I'm taking an assumption here, that maybe he actually agrees that quote-unquote resistance in the way that it's been launched isn't the way to peace. And that's something we might agree on. Whether you agree with Israeli policy or not is irrelevant. The reality is that most Israelis now view the creation of a Palestinian state under current conditions as an unacceptable security risk. And here's the important point. A peace agreement that one side will not accept is not a peace agreement. It is a fantasy. Now let's talk about Saudi Arabia, because I suspect that Dr. Hota will argue that Saudi Arabia can make or will make the two-state solution happen. Saudi Arabia is an important country, and I actually argue a lot of times on my lives to increase relationships with Saudi Arabia as Americans. Saudi Arabia has some leverage. I agree. Saudi Arabia has money. Saudi Arabia has diplomatic and, more importantly, social influence, especially in the not just Arab but Muslim world. Saudi Arabia can make demands. Saudi Arabia can delay normalization, and Saudi Arabia can even lobby and pressure Washington. But Saudi Arabia cannot force Israelis to vote for a Palestinian state. They cannot force the broken Palestinian national movements to actually come together. Saudi Arabia cannot force Hamas to disarm. Saudi Arabia cannot force Fatah and Hamas to unify. Saudi Arabia cannot solve Jerusalem. They cannot solve the refugees. They cannot solve borders. They cannot solve security guarantees. They can make demands, but they cannot make two populations trust each other. That is the central flaw in my opponent's argument. He confuses leverage with implementation, I suspect. A veto is not a blueprint. Saudi Arabia can say no. That does not mean Saudi Arabia can make everyone else say yes, and history proves this. In fact, every single time that there's actually been more autonomy given to the Palestinians, it's actually led to more attacks, more terrorism, more suffering on both the Palestinian side and the Israeli side. The Arab Peace Initiative, introduced in 2002, was 24 years ago. If Saudi leverage alone could create a Palestinian state, we would already have one. And the reality is that Saudi Arabia has possessed enormous diplomatic, financial, religious, geopolitical influence for decades. And the problem has never been a lack of leverage. The problem has been the absence of conditions necessary for implementation. Now we can talk about public opinion, because peace is not made by diplomats alone. It is made by people. Recent polling shows major opposition to a two-state solution among both Israelis and Palestinians, as my opponent did point out, but you have to think about that. The two populations that would actually have to live under this arrangement increasingly do not believe in it, and yet we're told that foreign governments are going to impose it anyways. That is not how sustainable peace works. A peace agreement imposed against the will of the people becomes a temporary ceasefire waiting to collapse at best. Now let's talk about something that almost nobody wants to discuss. The two-state solution was originally built upon a series of assumptions, which my opponent kind of talked about a little bit. Palestinians would eventually unify under a single authority, and that violence would decrease, the trust would increase, and the economic cooperation would expand. Mutual recognition would become stronger over time. The opposite happened, right? Because that's what you would expect, right? But the opposite happened, and the Palestinian political system fractured. Hamas took Gaza, right? Which I would argue was a pre-two-state solution, and we saw exactly what happened. And we're not talking about years later or after something happened. We're talking about 4 months after the Israelis ethnically cleansed the Jews out of Gaza and left. 4 months later, Hamas was voted in, and then not long after that, they slaughtered other Palestinians, Fatah members, even killed one on live TV, and the peace process collapsed completely, and they took over Gaza. Terror attacks continued, increased, settlement growth continued, trust evaporated, and October 7th shattered whatever you can possibly argue remained after that. The architecture that was supposed to produce two states no longer exists. You cannot continue pretending that a bridge exists after the supports have collapsed. And finally, I want to address something important. Declaring the two-state solution dead is not the same thing as celebrating it. Those are two different things. A doctor can declare a patient dead, for example, without wanting the patient to die. So likewise, recognizing reality is not endorsing reality. And I would love to live in a world where there is actually trust in each other, and there's actually peace between Jews, Arabs, enough to peacefully divide the land, if you will. And I would love to live in a world where, borders, refugees, Jerusalem, security, governance could all be resolved. But wishing for something does not make it achievable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to narrow down the rebuttal. 4 minutes, guys. Go ahead, Dr. Hoda. You have 4 minutes.
Well, yeah, I think okay. It's more than enough. So thank you, Ahmed. I think my opponent's arguments actually sort of proves my position more than it proves his, because what we've heard so far is not evidence that the two-state solution is dead. What we've heard is evidence that it is difficult, delayed, and politically blocked. But difficulty is not the same as death, right? The motion that we have before us is not whether a two-state solution can be achieved tomorrow. It is not whether the current sort of political climate is favorable for a two-state solution. And it is not whether trust exists between the two parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians. The motion that we have is whether the two-state solution is dead or delayed. And to prove that something is dead, you have to prove that it is no longer possible, right? And I think my opponent has not done that. What he has done is sort of describe obstacles, right? And they are serious obstacles, yes. But I mean, the obstacles are not proof of sort of the impossibility, right? Trust can change, governments can change, leadership can change, political realities can change, and we saw that in real life. The history is full of these sort of conflicts that people declare permanently unsolvable until they actually become resolved. Nobody thought that suddenly Syria is going to be under HTS Jolani Ahmed al-Shara, but guess what? In reality, it happened. So I think we need to be very careful about sort of confusing today's reality with tomorrow's possibilities. Okay. And also, I want to focus on what I believe is the sort of central weakness in my opponent's argument. And it is, if the two-state solution is dead, what replaces it, right? and this is not this is not a rhetorical question here, right? If the two states solution is impossible, then what is the actual end game here? A single democratic state? Because we both know, like large parts of the Israeli society would absolutely reject that because they believe it would end the sort of Jewish character of the state, right? Again, is our option permanent occupation? That's not a solution. I mean, it is simply sort of the continuation of the conflict, under a different name. So, what is it? A mass population transfer? And I've heard that a lot. That is neither, again, morally acceptable, nor, more importantly, leave the morality aside, more importantly, it is not politically achievable, right? So what, permanent war? Is that what is going to happen? And this is not a solution either, not benefiting any of the sides. So I would respectfully ask my opponent to sort of identify a realistic alternative, right? Because declaring the only internationally recognized framework, which is the two-state solution, as dead without presenting, a sort of viable replacement, does not solve the problem that we have. It merely describes the problem, which we can all both do, right? And I also want to address the sort of very important aspect, which is the territorial issue, because a key question is whether sort of the West Bank was always intended to be a sort of permanent land grab by the Israelis. Because if it was a permanent land grab, then peace was never possible. And if it was not a land grab, then the sort of principle of land for peace still exists, right? And again, the history here matters. Israel has historically exchanged territories for peace before. Sinai with Egypt, the withdrawal from Gaza in 2005. So, people, could debate whether those decisions were, again, wise, successful, but they do demonstrate something important here, that the territorial withdrawal is not impossible. Political decisions created the current reality that we have. And political decisions can alter the current reality that we have, right? So settlements that were built through the past political decisions that were made, the borders, they can be changed. All of these are political decisions. Land swaps could be negotiated. I mean, all of these, again, are political initiatives that could be done. Now, I'm not saying that any of this is easy, but difficult is not impossible, right? They're not the same thing. And in fact, I would argue that the reason that the two-state solution continues to sort of dominate the international diplomacy is because there is no credible alternative that has emerged, right?
Time.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you. So first, I think to answer the question, or to answer the point about what I believe to be a trap question to identify a realistic solution, it's a trap question. You do not need to present a fully developed alternative solution in order to argue that the two-state solution is currently dead. The topic tonight isn't whether I have a perfect solution. The topic is whether the two-state solution is realistically, keyword, achievable in the foreseeable future. As for, to go back to like the start of his argument, I would say that overall, I think that it's interesting that my opponent actually spent most of the time arguing why a two-state solution failed historically rather than explaining why it's realistically achievable now. So let's start with the first claim that the Israelis' capture of Judea Samaria in 1967 was intended as a permanent land grab that prevented peace. I did forget to answer that question in my opening, so I'll answer that now. I think obvious things have changed, as I made in my opening statement, about the security being the most important thing. If you're asking at the original land grab, if you want to call it that, I would argue that they were pushing out an illegal annexation of Jordan in 1949 after the armistice. It was only recognized by the British and Pakistan. It was an illegal annexation. The UPJ principle of international law, which is customary international law prior to the Oslo Accords treaty law being signed, the UPJ principle would argue, as it was, the borders of a new emerging state, in this case Israel, takes on the borders of the prior entity. That would actually include Judea, Samaria, would actually even include Gaza, right? If we're going to customary international law, knowing that Partition 181 never went through. That's customary international law, but that's not what happened. The armistice was signed. Jordan illegally annexed it. Wasn't recognized by the international community, again, except for the British and Pakistan. And so Israel pushing them out of Judea and Samaria, even though they were the aggressors, simply is nothing more than them pushing out a people that illegally annexed it in the first place. It was never Palestinian land. And I'd like to ask my opponent why we automatically assume that Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, is somehow known as Palestinian land. The best you can argue in 1967, because the 2002 Arab peace deal was talking about to go back to the June 4th, 1967 borders, except the problem is that Jordan actually was in control of that. It didn't arguably even become Palestinian until November 15th, 1988, after Jordan officially relinquished all control of Judea Samaria. So, and that, again, even that's arguable, but that's a best case scenario would be November 15th, 1988. So even if I accept that premise entirely, and I don't, it still doesn't particularly prove the argument, because the question tonight is, again, not why the two-state solution has struggled. I'd have to ask him also, as a second question, would you accept a two-state solution if under the condition that if Palestine ever attacked Israel just once, and no, I'm not talking about some rogue person doing it, I mean the state of Palestine attacking it or having some systematic attack in some way, could Israel go through and then actually annex all of Judea, Samaria, or it would be called Palestine at the time because it'd be a sovereign state if they were to attack Israel just once? Because if you cannot guarantee that, then I have no reason to believe why the Israelis should trust the Palestinians if even the Arabs cannot trust them to not attack the Israelis ever again. Other thing is, would you wait for a two-state solution only after the Palestinians, including their UNRWA books, both in Gaza, the Judea, Samaria, West Bank, if they were to remove from their books and their education system on how to kill Jews and how to hate Jews, and that there was a re-education, and then only then after terrorism completely stops, if they can get a hold on terrorism, even if they don't agree with it, if they can get a hold of it and stop it completely, then at that point Israel agrees to a two-state solution and they give them a second state. Would you agree to that? And if you can't, then that tells me that you cannot guarantee security. Let's assume opportunities were missed. How does the answer to the question of who governs Gaza tomorrow, how does that answer the question of Hamas? How does that answer the question of security arrangement? How does that answer the question of Jerusalem? I also have to ask, of course, does East Jerusalem become the capital of Palestine if there's a sovereign state? And if it does that mean they have the Temple Mount, the Kotel, the Western Wall in their country, which means Israel completely gives that up, their holiest spot? And would you be okay with splitting Mecca in half if you were to do that as a Muslim? Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Hoda.
Okay, thank you. Very important things that I want to. I never claimed that the Israelis did a land grab or did not do a land grab on the West Bank. It is an occupation. This is the internationally recognized situation. Israel itself does not claim the West Bank as it's officially part of Israel. Israel does not recognize the West Bank as the land of Israel. It is recognized, internationally as occupied land. So, and this is the second time sort of my opponent argued that the two-state solution is dead, but he still has not answered the most basic question: what replaces it? This is a very important question, right? Actually, looking for peace, have a solution to the problem that we have, right? So if it is dead, I mean, what other realistic alternatives do we have? We don't have one state. Is this what you want? That means equal citizenship for the Palestinians and the Israelis, in one sort of political system? Because I know for a fact that, nobody wants that, both sides, right? And like permanent occupation of the Palestinians, that is the apartheid that we both agreed that we don't want to see, right? You said that you don't like to see the apartheid happening as a long-term solution. Well, it is an apartheid currently. And, if you don't give me an alternative to the two-state solution, then what you're really saying, without saying it, is yes, let these people live in an apartheid, right? And that's not a solution either, right? That's basically just conflict management, which is not what we want here. And, again, I think this now expulsion or transfer, this is probably what most Israelis, from what I learned in spaces, would probably argue for, right? And again, this is politically impossible. And I reckon they tried a lot. The recent Gaza war, they tried to expel them to Egypt and Jordan, and they failed. Right? So it's not even about is it morally acceptable. You just can't pull that off. It's not going to happen, right? So again, so what do we end up with? What is it? Endless war? And this is not a solution, again. So again, my opponent, has explained the two-state solution is difficult, right? And he has not explained what comes after it. And that's a big problem. Now, again, I have to make this very important on the West Bank. I want to be very clear, right? I did not say the West Bank was a land grab. It is, and it's. I want to make clear that it is internationally and not Israeli land, including not claim it as Israeli land. Now, I did not. Again, the West Bank internationally is recognized as occupied territory. It was occupied by Israel since 1967. The Palestinian people have a recognized right to self-determination there. So the question that I'm asking is quite different there, Nick. It's whether sort of Israel's occupation, right, meant to be a permanent. This is a question to you. Is the Israeli occupation to the West Bank meant to be a permanent land grab? Which, to you, since you're calling it Judea and Samaria, yes, it is. It is a land grab. Or was it sort of a territory occupied in war that could be exchanged in a political settlement for like land for peace thing, right? Because if it is not a permanent land grab, then the land for peace.
Time. By the way, Dr. Hoda, you're kind of
Okay.
like cutting
All right.
out every little bit. You're kind of cutting out. Go ahead, Nick.
All right.
Okay, yeah, just as much as he just kind of repeated his last rebuttal, but just as much as he's saying that, hey, he's not offering a solution. I would argue that he didn't answer any of my claims about what's the problem with the two-state solution. He didn't answer any question I said, would you accept this if it was a two-state solution? And I want to remind everyone of a very famous quote: perfect is the enemy of good. And this is the epitome of exactly what he's doing, right? So this idea that, oh, I see these problems with the one-state solution, so therefore you must go with the two-state solution. Again, the debate, let me make sure I'm reading it correctly, the debate is the two-state solution dead or simply delayed? Even if you argue that other solutions have problems, well, yeah, so does the two-state solution. Arguing that other solutions have problems, so therefore you have to take the two-state solution, I don't agree. I never called it an apartheid. I said what pro-Pelle's believed to be. It's very much not an apartheid. Apartheid, according to the Rome Statute, is actually when you have two different systems under the same governance, not two different systems under two different governments. That falls under the Oslo Accords. We can probably put a pin in that. Maybe we can have another debate on a different day about why, so we don't get lost in the tracks. But no, I do not do not believe it's an apartheid because it doesn't match definition. The three options I would have for the Palestinians to answer kind of your question, I believe that they have three options that they can choose, and I represent them as Jordan, Nazareth, or Gaza. Now, that's not to be literal Jordan, Nazareth, or Gaza, but they represent an analogy. And so Jordan represents those Palestinian Arabs who are like, look, I don't recognize Israel, but I also am not like a jihadi. I don't want to fight them. I'm not part of that. That represents Jordan, meaning they can leave. That's up to them. If the Nazareth represents the Arabs that very much love Israel, they might have their problems with Israel, but they actually want to see it grow, and they see themselves as Israeli Arabs, and they're not enemies to the state. They're not trying to undermine it. That represents Nazareth. They can stay and get citizenship and help grow the country, just like I love to see. When I was just in Israel a couple weeks ago, I went to many of the Arab neighborhoods. I even went to the Area A and the Palestinian Authority territories, and I saw a lot of the differences in attitudes. That's Nazareth. And then Gaza is the one that represents those that want to commit acts of terrorism to undermine the Jewish state. They can die, and I really have no problem saying that. So they have three options. That's up to them. I believe peace is not through the Palestinians. I believe it's around the Palestinians. So I'm not particularly interested in this. I'm particularly interested in what Israel is trying to gain. Also, the reason I call it Judea and Samaria is not necessarily because I'm calling it a permanent land grab, although, of course, I do see it very much as part of the Jewish people. Judea and Samaria is very much important to them. That doesn't mean that I don't think. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Now we're going to narrow it down to two minutes, guys, okay? 2 minutes back and
My
forth.
partner has now made this sort of strongest argument for my position that we've heard tonight, because for the first time he has finally answered my question: what replaces the two-state solution? And his answer was not one of an alternative; it was of categorizing the Palestinians into three. Right? It is either leave, assimilate, or die. This is exactly what he just said. He said either die in Gaza, assimilate, or leave. And I really don't know how he's able to sort of categorize them, and who's the judge on what their positions are, which is interesting. And with respect, this is not a political solution to a conflict, right? This is not a peace framework. This is not a diplomatic settlement, and this is not an internationally recognized sort of end state. In fact, what my opponent has just described is precisely why the two-state solution continues to exist as the only serious framework on the table. Because the conflict is not between, a few individuals choosing where they actually want to live. It is a conflict between two national communities, the Israelis and the Palestinians, both of whom claim the same land and both of whom seek self-determination, right? Now, let me address something else here. You see, my opponent says, I haven't answered the problem to the two-state solution. And again, I will tell you that, of course, there are problems with the two-state solution. I have never denied that. The question tonight is not whether the two-state solution has problems, right? Every proposed solution has problems. The question is whether the two-state solution is dead. And ironically, my opponent's own alternative proven to us tonight that it's not dead, because none of the alternatives he actually presented are realistic or internationally accepted or capable of ending the conflict, right? And I also want to return to the West Bank here. My opponent is speaking as though the outcome has already been decided, as though the territory is simply Israel's and the discussion is over, right? But this is precisely the issue that we have here, and that is under dispute. The West Bank is not recognized as sovereign Israeli territory. The entire international community and the entire international debate exists because its final status remains unresolved, right? And that brings me back to the key question I asked earlier: was the occupation of the West Bank intended as a permanent land grab? If yes, then peace was never possible. If no, then territorial compromise remains possible. And my opponent keeps describing today's reality. What he has not demonstrated is a real viable solution. That three thing that you just mentioned, the death or assimilate or leave, is not a solution, and it's not going to work. Ahmed, do I have time?
Yeah, time. Okay, I gave you 20 more seconds so you can finish your point.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ned.
Again, he has not demonstrated why future, sort of Israeli governments, future Palestinian leadership, future sort of regional arrangements, or future international pressure could never produce a negotiated settlement. Why is that the case? He has demonstrated only obstacles. He has demonstrated frustration. He has demonstrated distrust, but none of those things are proof of the death of the solution. If anything, his alternative actually demonstrated exactly why the
Time.
two continues to survive every prediction of its demise. Thank you.
Time. Thank you.
Okay, can I
Go
get
ahead,
that
Nick.
added on to mine?
Yeah, of course. You'll get
Thank you.
exact time.
Okay. So yeah, so a couple things, right? If the whole argument is that being a patriot of the state of Israel as an Arab means assimilation, then this argument doesn't. That answers plenty. I don't believe that to be assimilation at all. But that being said, your argument is not Israel already annexed the West Bank, therefore two states are impossible, because that's a weaker argument and it's a moving of the goalposts. Whether Israel formally annexes Judea, Samaria, the West Bank or not is irrelevant to whether a viable two-state solution can actually be implemented. And like you said, the solution, or sorry, him not really particularly answering the concerns that are very much legitimate, and all he's saying is, yeah, there are problems, but they're problems that can be solved, is equally me saying that, yeah, there's problems with the one-state solution, but me not answering that is a complete difference, because that's not what the topic is about. The topic is about a two-state solution. So I think it's more important for you to answer those questions, and if you cannot, the two-state solution is very clearly dead, because, again, I live in a sense of reality. If you want to say that, pushing people out that want to undermine a state is somehow not accepted, then I have to bring up an incredible amount of examples of actually when we've done that in the world as an international community plenty of times. That's not what I want, but at the same time, we are in a unique situation that I think you and I would both agree only exist in this land and nowhere else. There is some unique things about the Israel-Palestine conflict that you find nowhere else. I don't think that's controversial to say. And with unique situations comes unique solutions. And unfortunately, the world is not ready to say those solutions. I'm simply saying them. And the world wants to treat it as if it's just something else, just like any other piece of land. It's not. It's not actually not an answer to my argument. I never said the two-state solution, right, is that because Israel formally considers West Bank, Judea, Samaria part of sovereign Israel or not. The two-state solution is effectively dead because the practical conditions necessary to implement it do not exist. Whether Israel recognizes Judea, Samaria is part of Israel or not doesn't solve Hamas. It doesn't solve Palestinian political division. It doesn't solve Israeli security concerns after October 7th, Jerusalem, refugees, border arrangements, enforcement mechanisms, public oppositions on both sides. You can tell me Israel doesn't officially claim the West Bank all day long, or it does, and it doesn't matter, because I'm here about a realistic solution on whether the two-state solution can be one of those, and I'm saying it cannot. History has shown, not just once, not twice, every single time, that anything even close to what you want to believe to be a two-state solution, or you can just call it autonomy, has always led to more suffering, more terrorist attacks, and more barbarism by the Palestinians. A lot of it being because they are fractured.
Time.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Hoda.
Thank you. I want to make something very clear here and very important. So when I say that you don't have an alternative, this is actually, the reality of the politics of it, because the Saudi Arabia and the Arab Initiative in 2002, the Saudi Initiative and the Arab Peace Initiative in 2002 was an offering for peace in the region. Now, Israel, rejected it, but the problem is Israel did not give us an alternative, just like, what you are doing right now, right? Like, if you're talking about you want peace in the region, the Saudi Arabia and the Arab said, hey, this is our plan for peace of the region. Israel didn't take and say, no, listen, I think that I need to change this and that. This is my peace. They just rejected it and didn't give us an alternative. Exactly what you're doing. But actually, you're a little bit better. You kind of gave us an alternative that doesn't make any sense. It's not going to work. So again, notice what he keeps saying. He keeps saying that there are problems with the two-state solution. I agree. I have made that very clear that I agree there are problems with the two-state solution. There are serious problems. There are security concerns. There are border concerns. There are settlement concerns. There are governance concerns. There are many problems. I agree, but that is not the standard for proving that the two-state solution is dead, right? To prove that the two-state solution is dead, you have to prove that those problems are impossible to solve, right? And my opponent has not done that. He has repeatedly described obstacles and then simply sort of assumed that they are permanent, right? And this is not an argument. This is a conclusion, right? And I want everyone listening to notice something very important, which is a few minutes ago, my opponent criticized me for asking for an alternative, right? But then he spent several minutes explaining his alternative, right? Because deep down, he sort of understands that if you declare the two-state solution dead, you have to explain what comes next. And what comes next in his model is some Palestinians leave, some Palestinians stay under the Israeli sovereignty, and some Palestinians, are treated as like, people that don't have souls and they can die in Gaza. And this is not an alternative state structure. This is not a political settlement. This is not a negotiated peace. This is a description, right, of what he personally believes should happen. Those are two different things. And now let me address the West Bank directly, really fast. My opponent says annexation is irrelevant, right? I disagree completely. The reason annexation matters here is because it reveals the intent. The key question I've asked, this whole debate remains unanswered. Is the West Bank a permanent land grab? Or is it territory whose final status remains negotiable? Because if the final status remains negotiable, then the territorial compromise remains possible. And if the territorial compromise remains possible, then the two-state solution cannot be dead. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Okay, I just want to correct him. I never said anything about specifically Gaza. I said they don't literally represent Gaza, and I never said Palestinians. I said terrorists. I said people that actually attack, whether it be Arab, Jew, whatever, the state of Israel to undermine it, they can die. And I will say that again, loud and proud. I didn't say anything about just Palestinians with no souls. I said specifically terrorists. As for the 2002 peace initiative was offered, it's not a mechanism. It offered a broad Arab normalization in exchange for Israeli withdrawal in a Palestinian state. In fact, you can read the whole thing in about 5 minutes. If you're a slow reader, maybe 10 minutes. It did not solve Israel's security demands, Hamas refugee return, language, Jerusalem sovereignty or enforcement. It didn't solve any of that. It was just a very broad few statements. And I'm serious. You guys can read it in like 5-10 minutes. So it's not about rejecting. It just wasn't it wasn't anything. It was an initiative to say, hey, this is kind of what we're trying to aim towards. But I find it funny that my opponent find it so problematic that Israel, quote unquote, didn't offer anything back. They just said no, because that's exactly what has happened with the Olmert plan, right? Realignment plan, Camp David, and everything else actually before that. That's just in this century, right? And all the things that happened in between those. I'm just going with the major deals. That's exactly what happened. Bill Clinton was quoted saying specifically that Yasser Arafat was there for 14 days and said no to everything. And so if it's so problematic, like he just said for the Israelis to do, then therefore I will go ahead and say I agree with him. The problem is he doesn't realize that the Arab Peace Initiative was an offer and not a mechanism, whereas the Olmert plan, for example, was a mechanism, and they said no to that immediately. And so, yeah, sure, we agree, and thank you for proving my point. But as for like I said, my plan, this idea that a solution must exist and I must have the complete plan set out in every single mechanism and answer, and if I don't, therefore somehow I agree the two-state solution is not dead, which that's all he said this entire argument. That is not true. That does not prove that I believe that actually the two-state solution is just delayed and it's not dead. It doesn't mean that at all, because just as much as he still has not answered any of my questions about the two-state solution. And lastly, I asked a question a long time ago, would he accept a two-state solution if that means that if Palestine, the sovereign state of Palestine, were to attack Israel even just once, again, not a rogue person, I'm saying the state of Palestine, then Israel gets to go in and push them all out and annex it for their land and their sovereignty. Would he accept that deal? Or would he accept the deal that a two-state solution will not come until they re-educate their children? There's unread books that talk about 3 Molotov cocktails with 5 Jews. How many more Molotov cocktails do you need? By the way, that's not hyperbole. That's an actual question, right? When they remove that kind of stuff and things like Farfur and some saplings of Jerusalem camps and all of that, and then on top of that, completely stop terrorism, right, and terrorist attacks, and then at that point, Israel will hand it over. People don't have a right to land. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So my opponent brought up the Olmert proposal as evidence that the two-state solution has failed. But the Olmert proposal actually helps my case, not his. You see, the proposal was not fully concluded. Olmert actually resigned. And by the way, he put it on the table, was not rejected by anybody. It was taken back out of the table. He resigned. He faced political and legal troubles, and he left office, right? And then who did we get? We got Netanyahu, basically the guy from Philadelphia, running the show right now for the Imperial United States. Now, the process ended before a sort of final agreement could be reached, right? So this is not evidence that a two-state solution is impossible. In fact, it is evidence that a political process was interrupted. In fact, the Olmert negotiations proved the exact opposite of my opponent's claim. They proved that the senior Israeli and Palestinian leadership were still negotiating, right, the two-state, agreements as recently as 2008, right? Now, a negotiation collapsing because a prime minister leaves office is evidence of political instability. It is not evidence that the concept itself is dead. And, a very important thing that we have here, which is the point that is demonstrated that political actors in the region were still discussing the two-state solution outcome. This is very, very important. Likewise, Camp David discussed a two-state outcome. Likewise, the Olmert proposal discussed a two-state outcome. Likewise, virtually every major diplomatic initiative for decades has revolved around a two-state outcome. Why is that? Because despite all the failures, no alternative has gained sort of a comparable legitimacy, acceptance, or even practicality. All of them revolve around the two-state solution. And that is the point that my opponent still not has really overcome. Every example he gives is actually an example of people negotiating over what I argue, the two-state solution, not replacing it with something else. Like, I do understand that the two-state solution needs negotiations, right? I understand that the plan and the pathway is not yet there, right? But what I argue is that it is what we should work on. Right, again, and history has proven it over, all of these years. The negotiations was always over the two-state solution, not over a replacement to the two-state solution. So, even your own examples prove that the framework actually remains alive. The negotiations has failed, but the framework survived. This is my point. The proposals failed, but the framework survived. The leaders failed, but the framework survived. They keep revolving around an idea of a two-state solution. And that's because, again, failure is not death of the two-state solution. The burden in this debate is not to prove that negotiations have failed before. Everyone agrees that they have failed. The burden here is to prove that a two-state solution has become permanently impossible. And after this discussion of either Camp David, Olmert, Clinton, Arafat, Arab Peace Initiative, I still not have heard an argument for impossibility, right? I've heard evidence of delay, which I agree. I've heard evidence of frustration, which I also have. I've heard evidence of repeated failures, which we all saw. But repeated failures, permanent impossibility are not the same thing. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so as for the Olmert proposal, that's not true actually at all. In fact, there was an interview by Mahmoud Abbas that actually specifically said, 24 minutes in that interview with Channel 10, he was actually asked exactly what happened. And this is a quote from Mahmoud Abbas: "I did not agree. I rejected it out of hand and immediately," right? And so it actually wasn't after Olmert resigned. It was before he resigned. And that being said, the reason he's saying this is because later he said, I meant that's because Olmert was resigning soon. And either way, that's a quote from Abbas. You guys can look it up after. But that being said, as for any of the questions that I had brought up, he still hasn't answered any of them. Right? Because I'm not simply saying, he keeps saying that I'm saying that, negotiations have not done well. Yeah, he acknowledges that. I acknowledge that too, but that has never left my mouth in any of my arguments. That has nothing to do with it. I'm answering. First off, I brought up a lot. I ran down an entire list. None of them have been answered. But if you answer just one, let's talk about security. The amount of area that they made it into October 7th from the Gaza border into Israel proper was longer than the distance from Judea, Samaria, West Bank, whatever you want to call it, to the Mediterranean Sea by far. And so if they can do that from tiny little Gaza Strip, then the idea of what they can do from an entire state is astronomical. And you, or I for that matter, do not have to live with the consequences of being wrong and getting to say after the fact of, oopsie, I guess we were wrong, that sucks, because at that point it's too late. And yeah, sure, you can say, well, Saudi Arabia will step in and do something about it. Where's Saudi Arabia been this entire time? Saudi Arabia has some leverage. Saudi Arabia does not have the ability to force a people who do not want, and I'm including the Palestinians in this, actually probably even more than Israel, but both, to be honest, that do not want a two-state solution. You cannot force that. Saudi Arabia does not have that much leverage. Saudi Arabia has energy lanes, and therefore it is important in a lot of aspects to the United States of America, but economically aside, not that important. And so as for Saudi Arabia normalization, Israel survived 1948 with Saudi Arabia. Without their recognition, they survived 56, they survived 67 and 73 and 82 with Saudi Arabia recognition. And this also, by the way, is before there was any permanent actual United States funding to the state of Israel, right? Which didn't actually really come about permanently or more progressively until the late 1980s. And so they survived without it. Is it something they desire? Yes. And I would desire that too. I respect a lot about Saudi Arabia, and I'll just say this real quick, and Mohammed bin Salman, but there's more there. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr.
That I don't answer your questions. I'm really I don't know which question you think I didn't answer, right? And I want to factual corrections here. He said that the Palestinians don't want a two-state solution. This is not true. Every single political faction in Palestine is for a two-state solution, right? The PA, I don't like Hamas, but even Hamas is for a two-state solution. All of the factions are for a two-state solution. So I don't know what you're talking about, right? Something also very important. I think the question that you claim I didn't answer was, how can you solve the security problem that exists if a two-state solution happens? I will answer that question, but I want to point out to everybody something very interesting. He is now negotiating under the framework of a two-state solution, right? Like, this is what I think is the way to solve the problem. He's asking me a question revolving around the solution to the obstacles we have on the two-state solution, right? Like, even him, what he's doing is he is asking me a question, negotiating the two-state solution, which I want to do. Let's discuss the two-state solution's problems, right? But first, you concede that it's not dead, and it's our only possible way to finish this problem, right? And I'll answer your question. I think that Palestine should be a demilitarized a country in the beginning of its existence. I think that, I understand that the Israelis have the cards, and it is, from an Israeli point of view, why should I give these people land and then expect them from that land to go ahead and attack me? I'm a rational person, right? I'm a reasonable person, and that makes sense if you have the power and have the guns and occupy the land. Why should I give it to them for them to attack me? Reasonable. I think that it should be a demilitarized one to ensure that, one, the Palestinians have dignity and a state, right? Yes, it will be a demilitarized state, but that's not something that's new. Germany was demilitarized when it began. Japan was demilitarized when it began. This is not even a new concept. But we're still revolving around the two-state solution, mind you. Number two is that, again, the Palestinians will get self-determination. They will get dignity. They will live in their own country and their own identity. But also, importantly, for the other side, the Israelis will get integration in the region, normalization with Saudi Arabia, normalization with 52 countries of the OIC, and Israel can actually put their foot in the ground and actually be an integrated part of this region, right? And the Jews can actually finally say, we have a land to go back to that is peaceful and integrated in the region, right? But again, this is all around the two-state solution. So you actually proved my point by answering your question that the only viable option we have is a two-state solution. We just have to fix the perks and the problems around it. So I answered your security issue. And again, listen, the October the 7th thing, I have a completely different take on the whole October the 7th thing. I don't want to, we can do it later on in the discussion. I just don't want to divert a lot. And again, even if I accept all the concerns that you have raised, right? The concerns that you have raised are under some of them very legitimate, but they are under the framework of the two-state solution. And I'm telling you, these are legitimate concerns. They have solutions. We can solve that. But under the two-state solution, you did not say, hey, 1, 2, 3 means that the two-state solution is impossible, right? This is the next solution, and this is why the next solution is way more doable than the two-state solution. What you have done is said, hey, the 1, 2, 3 means the two-state solution is not happening, right? And I agree with you, and I can answer 1, 2, and 3, and we can go all night answering.
Time. Okay, guys, we have to narrow it down to 2 minutes right now. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so he said that because I'm asking questions, that means I'm negotiating two-state solutions, so it proves his point. I just want to point out that he also asked questions, so therefore I guess that would mean he's negotiating a one-state solution, and therefore that means he's for the one-state solution. No, listen, the framework can always exist in everything. The framework can exist in a dead solution. Saying the framework exists doesn't prove that it's not dead. Of course, it's still dead. As for demilitarizing the Palestinians, yeah, it sounds great. We can't even get Hamas to agree to demilitarization, even after being utterly thwarted and even increased international pressure up the wazoo. Even people that are against the state of Israel, might even see them as a pariah state, have called for their demilitarization, and they're still fighting it. They're even fighting Saudi Arabia, possibly calling for it. So if Saudi Arabia has the power, then man, if you guys can get on that, that'd be great, let alone the entire Palestinians. As for the right to a state, there's no such thing as a right to a state. Self-determination has nothing to do with that. You must deserve a state. The Palestinians have not shown anything to deserve that. It shows nothing whatsoever. In fact, even the argument that Israel must supply a lot of the stuff to the Palestinians show that they can't even figure that out themselves. And as for the questions you haven't answered, because you asked me what haven't I answered, you still have not answered about Saudi Arabia cannot force Israelis to vote for a Palestinian state, which, by the way, because it's a democratic state, it'd have to go to the cabinet, the prime minister, and then even after that, it goes to the Knesset, and then after that, they have to have an 81 Knesset members, which is not even just a simple majority, is beyond that vote. Even if somehow you convince that, there's still 3 other steps, and that's assuming that it doesn't go to the Supreme Court, which it of course would. You cannot force that. I don't care if you're Saudi Arabia. I don't even care if you're the United States of America. You cannot force that. You cannot force Hamas to disarm, let alone the entire Palestinians. You cannot force Fatah and Hamas to unify, let alone the PIJ, PFLP, DFLP, PRC, Army of Islam, Mujahideen Brigades, Lion's Den. I can keep going. That's just off the top of my head. The Palestinians have pushed towards terrorism, and that has become their culture, and it's a very sad thing, but it is the truth. I'm here to live in reality, not live on what you can put down on a piece of paper, call a framework, and say, oh, look at that. It exists, and therefore it's not dead. Of course it's dead. You cannot solve Jerusalem. You still haven't answered my question about what happens to the Temple Mount, because East Jerusalem, from my understanding, East Jerusalem is including the Temple Mount and the Western Wall and Kotel. Does that go to Israel because it's their holiest spot? If it doesn't, would you Would you accept that if it was Mecca? And I hope you would say no, and I'd actually respect you for saying no. You cannot solve the refugees. You cannot solve the borders. We haven't talked about that. And yes, thank you for the security guarantees. Well, no, actually, it wasn't security guarantees. It's what you specifically said would be security guarantees, but you didn't guarantee what would happen. Because right now, we wanted Hamas to be demilitarized, but they still found a way with over 70 different tunnels coming in from Egypt and other areas to figure out how to get rockets and missiles and AKs and all of these weapons. What would happen if Palestine did that? And I ask you again for the 50th time, if there was a state of Palestine, would the agreement include that if Palestine attacks Israel even just once, Israel gets to go in, push them all out because we gave you everything you want and you still attacked us, East Jerusalem as a capital, a full state sovereignty and everything, would you accept that deal?
Thank you.
My opponent, again and again keeps listing reasons why a two-state solution could be difficult to achieve, right? Some of them I would agree with, some of them I don't, and I answered his questions, right? These are challenges, right? These are challenges involving Israeli politics, challenges involving public opinion on both sides, yeah. But once again, those arguments establish difficulty, not impossibility. And also my opponent keeps saying Saudi Arabia cannot force Israelis to vote for a Palestinian state. First of all, the Israeli population are not the ones that can decide the future of the Palestinian people per se, but I understand what you're trying to say, and I agree, right? I never claimed Saudi Arabia could force Israelis to do anything, just like I never claimed Saudi Arabia could force Hamas to disarm. But here's the problem. You see, the motion tonight is not whether Saudi Arabia can force a two-state solution, right? The motion is whether a two-state solution is dead. Those are completely two different things, right? Because every argument we've heard tonight has the same structure. This is difficult. This is difficult. The actors cannot be forced. That actor cannot be forced. Fine, right? We don't disagree on that, right? But what we're doing is we are talking about under the framework of the two-state solution. Now show me why that makes the negotiated settlement permanently impossible, right? That is the missing step in his argument. And I think there is another contradiction here that we have, is that my opponent says the framework can exist even if the solution is dead, right? But then he spends all of his time explaining why the framework cannot currently be implemented because of political realities, right? Current political realities, current security realities, current public opinion, current leadership, current organizations, right? But all of things can change. Governments do change, leaders do change, public opinion does change, regional alignments do change, right? Security arrangements do change. History is full of those examples where people declared sort of political outcomes impossible until they actually happen. Syria is the best example. And finally, I want to focus on a point here. My opponent argues that Palestinians do not deserve a state. That is a perfectly, fine opinion for you to hold as an opinion, right? But notice what happened. We have now moved away from the claim that a two-state solution is impossible into the claim that Palestinians should not receive one regardless, right? Of any framework. And those are two different arguments here. One is an argument about, sort of a feasibility. The other is an argument about desirability, right? So tonight's debate is not whether my opponent wants a Palestinian state. Tonight's debate is whether the two-state solution is dead or not, right? And after everything we've heard, I still have not heard proof that it is impossible. What I've heard is that my opponent believes it is undesirable, believes it is dangerous, believes it is risky, believes it is difficult, right? And this is why negotiations under the two-state solution should happen, right? This is why a pathway to a Palestinian state should happen, for those difficult things to be resolved and to be solved between the parties. Now, again, this is not the same as proving death. A solution is dead when it cannot happen, not oppose it. Thank you.
What is the time that we're on right now? How many minutes is it?
Well, it was supposed to be 2 minutes, but I allow you guys to go on with your points, so it extends to 3 minutes. So it's 3 minutes and 5 seconds. So I'm going to give you the same amount. Go ahead.
I got you. Yeah, so again, he just said the same exact thing every rebuttal. I never once out of my mouth has said that it is difficult. I am absolutely saying it is dead. The fact that he has not been able to answer these questions with anything effective is kind of proving my point. Of course it's dead. As for Saudi Arabia and what I'm talking about them not being able to force Israel, right, to actually even make these votes, is because we're talking about sovereignty. What he argued for earlier, because he said my kind of solution about what I said, that the Palestinians have 3 choices, was, so bad and it was so wrong. One of them being to push out anyone who actually wants to undermine the state of Israel, but isn't going to, be like a terrorist. I don't think you should kill them. Like I said, that's reserved for terrorists. He thought that was so wrong, but his entire premise of a two-state solution would be to ethnically cleanse out about 700,000 Jews. Because that's exactly what it would be. You would have to pull out of every single neighborhood in Judea, Samaria, every single Jew. That is an ethnic cleansing of 550 to 700,000 Jews. we're okay with ethnically cleansing the Jews, but if I say to push out some Palestinians, by the way, I didn't even say all like he's suggesting for, that's evil, that's wrong. Okay. Last time, my argument stems from this, especially with security, that I haven't got an answer for, kind of an answer with demilitarizing them. My argument stems from history, because history shows us if you know where you have been, you know where you are, and you know where you're going. That's what history gives us, right? And history has shown us, last time we ethnically cleansed Jews from an area for peace, it led to a terrorist hub, an area that was miles and miles and miles and acres of greenhouses and olive trees, and they burned it down because it was Jewish. They didn't want that. The Israelis even went with rabbinical permission and dug up the bones of their dead and took them out. That's how far they went with ethnically cleansing. They even cleansed the dead ones out of Gaza. And instead, and again, I'm not talking about after, a few years or they got fed up with something. We're saying 4 months after they left, they voted in Hamas. By the way, even before Hamas was voted in, they were launching rockets into Israel before the election was even complete. And so even after that, then Hamas ends up slaughtering a lot of Palestinians and takes full control, removes the Oslo Accords, right? And the Palestinians, after October 7th, even knowing what was done on October 7th, which my opponent doesn't sound like he's for at all, which I appreciate, but nonetheless, when the Arab Institute and even Dr. Khalil Shikaki asked the Palestinians in both the West Bank and Gaza, who do they support, at what percentage, the military wing of Hamas was supported 89%. This is not just a Hamas thing, this is a Palestinian culture. So again, I ask 2 questions. Will you accept that the Palestinians, right, that they have to remove all of this radical ideology and stop terrorism completely before getting into 2-state? And if, when they get their second state and they ethnically cleanse all the Jews, will you accept that if they attack Israel, they can go in and take it?
Okay. All right. So, all right, that's fantastic. I'm gonna answer your questions, but I want Ahmed. Can I ask something? Can we make this the last round, me and then him, and then after that an open debate? Because I feel like he feels there's some things that weren't answered, and maybe if we can have it open and respectfully with each other, we can actually tackle those issues. Is that okay, Ahmed? After this round, if Nick is okay.
Yeah, I'm down.
If you're okay with that.
All right, great.
Like 1 minute back and forth. Is that okay?
No. Give me my 2 minutes. Give him his 2 minutes, and then we can do like a 1 minute back and forth thing. How about that?
All right.
Because perfect. I did start, so he goes after me. The second he will get his 2 minutes, and then 1 forth. How about that?
All right, perfect.
All right. Okay. Okay. So I think my opponent did illustrate the difference between our positions perfectly. He's not arguing whether it's, he just said now he said that he's not arguing whether it's difficult. He's arguing that it is actually dead. But he has to prove its impossibility. You can't just say that, claim it, but not prove the impossibility. And what you just spend the last 3 minutes talking about on every single 3 minutes is Israeli politics, your security concerns, settlements, public opinion, Knesset, I don't know, Saudi Arabia's lack of to force people, Palestinian factions. All of those are obstacles, right? None of them are proof of impossibility. Now, let me address the settlement issue that you said directly. My opponent did say just now that a 2-state solution would require the ethnic cleansing of hundreds of thousands of Jews. This is not true, right? A 2-state solution does not automatically require that these people would be removed from, every Jew would be removed from the West Bank, right? There are multiple models out there that have been discussed for decades, right? Either it's land swabs, settlement sort of blocks remaining under Israeli sovereignty, a special arrangement for certain communities, even the possibility of some Jewish community remaining under Palestinian sort of sovereignty if mutually agreed. So, you might dislike these options, right? But their existence alone disproves the claim that the only possible outcome is ethnic cleansing, which you claimed, right? And more importantly, I want everyone listening here to notice something very important. My opponent keeps returning to the argument about why a 2-state solution is undesirable for him, why he thinks it's risky, dangerous, or difficult, right? And none of those arguments, right, are, proving that it is dead or is undoable. Those arguments are his desire against adopting it, right? Those arguments are about preference, not about possibility, right? And there's a crucial distinction there, very important for everybody to understand. Because, if I said tomorrow that a 2-state solution would be risky, I would agree with him. If I said tomorrow that that it would require compromises, all of this I believe, by the way, I would agree with him, right? If I say right now that I would require security guarantees, right, I would agree with him, right? None of those statements prove that it is impossible. Like the things that he mentioned, I agree with. Yes, it is true. It did not mean that the 2-state solution is impossible, right? So this is the problem. And finally, I think that we've arrived at a disagreement, actually, which is my opponent believes that Palestinian state.
Time.
My opponent believes the Palestinian state should not be created as a principle, right? And that is a very big problem. Go ahead, Ahmed.
All right. Okay, it's gonna be 1 minute back and forth. I just put an iPad or your screen or something, your phone.
Well, I think
You
I
need
have to
time
answer
it.
with the 2
It's 1
minutes
minute.
first.
All right, yeah, you have your 2
I
minutes.
mean,
So
I
go
won't
ahead.
even actually take 2 minutes. I just want to say a couple things. So yeah, first off, he kept saying West Bank over and over and over. So that's where I came up with the ethnic cleansing of the Jews. But if he's trying to say that that's not the case anymore, then of course during the 1 minute back and forth or just the kind of back and forth we have, maybe I'll get this answer because that's interesting because now he's essentially saying that no, all the settlements can stay actually. Which would be interesting. So you don't ethnically cleanse any of the Jews, and then you'd have a very weird polka dotted state. But okay, I'm willing to listen to that. That being said, I still have not got the answer. Would you accept? And again, maybe this can happen in the back and forth. If you can accept the deal of first you have to remove every single education that calls for the death of Jews and the undermining of the Jewish state and all of that, and to stop terrorism completely, then you get a second state, and then after that, there has to be something negotiated, especially if your argument is that you demilitarize all of Palestine. And also, is that permanent? But especially if the state of Palestine has anything systematic that attacks the state of Israel, does Israel get to go in and say, you know what, that was the last of the last of the last straw. We have literally tried everything, including what the international community said we should do. We are done, and now we are pushing you all out and taking this land for ours. This is our land now. Would you accept that? And I don't know. I don't need the whole 2 minutes, but maybe we can just get to the back and the forth.
All right, cool.
All right. Okay. So I
You,
appreciate
you guys kind of going in a cycle, by the way.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that he does not prove that the two-state solution is dead. He's saying that there's obstacles. I agree on, and people have discussed it, but he does not give. Hey, like he doesn't say, hey, the two-state solution is dead because 1, 2, 3 proves that there's a block that will never happen, right? And then he would say, what he should say is that. And then he would say, this is what the solution is. 1, 2, 3. But he failed to do that. He didn't prove it's dead. He proved there are problems, which I agree with him there are, and he didn't give me another solution that is, doable. Right, so this is to me like the two-state solution stays as the only viable option. And again, and again, you keep giving me questions, Nick, about what a future two-state solution should, look like. And again, should Palestinian education be reformed? Should terrorism end, et cetera, et cetera? Should there be security guarantees? Should there be demilitarization? Should there be enforcement mechanisms? Listen, my simple answer to all of those is, of course, those issues should be negotiated. Absolutely, right? Of course, security guarantees should
But they
be,
have been
necessary.
negotiated already.
Absolutely. No, I reckon they're not.
No,
And
they have
listen,
been.
I want to say
Time. No, you won't.
Oh,
Go
sorry. I
ahead.
thought we were just doing back and forth. My bad. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, Ahmed, I think we're civilized enough to keep it open. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah,
If that's okay with Nick and you, Ahmed.
it's fine.
All
If
right.
it gets
Sure,
if it gets
sure.
uncivilized, then we'll go to timed. But for now, we'll just keep it
Well,
open. Yeah,
Well,
listen.
you better try to hold your horses.
Well, then I'm free to play some video games, guys. So you guys squash it out.
I thought you
Have
were
a nice
playing
day.
games all the time, but go ahead, Nick.
I am, yeah, but I'm not focusing much. So go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah, no, listen. Again, someone answer the question, and the reason I'm asking these questions is because most of them have been negotiated and failed. So you saying like, yeah, you're just mentioning problems. You're not mentioning, why it's not dead. Well, first off, everything in the world is a problem, and everything literally could be. My argument is that it's not reality. And so I have to ask you again, would you accept two-state solution only when they just this one quick question, only when they completely remove from their education systems this terrorist mindset, stop all terrorism, then you get the second state, and then only then when you get that, you can do what you want. You can have right of return, you can do your sovereign state. If you attack Israel, Israel then gets to say, we are now done. This is it. We're done. We're taking this land. Would you accept that?
Okay, so this is actually a very, very good opportunity here. I think this is exactly where me and you disagree. This very point here. You just asked me a lot of these questions, right? And you're saying that these questions matter, and they do because many of them have been negotiated in the past and failed. This is what you're saying, and I agree with you, right? You're right. Now, many negotiations have failed, many proposals have failed, many leaders have failed. I agree. Many peace processes have failed. I have never disputed any of that, Nick. I've never said they did not fail. But my point here, which I'm frustrated that you can't, tackle, is that failure, Nick, of these negotiations is not the same thing as impossibility, right? And if 10 negotiations fail, that tells us that, 10 negotiations failed. It does not tell us that the negotiation number 11 must also fail, right? You understand what I'm trying to point out here? If 10 negotiations fail, that does not prove that 11 would fail. right? We would be pessimistic about 11, but none of us can bet their bottom dollar in their life that 11 would fail, right? Now, wait, Nick. Don't tell me that negotiation, that if a proposal is rejected, then that tells us that the proposal is, that there's no possibility for another proposal, right? It does not tell us that every future proposal must be rejected, right?
So would you accept the deal I offered?
I still haven't heard justified. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. So would you accept the deal that I offered?
Which is? Can you repeat it, please?
Sure. One more time. Again, you have to remove all in their education, this push towards terrorism, stop all, not most, all terrorism, then you get a second state, and if you attack from there as a sovereign state against the sovereign state of Israel, Israel gets to go in and say, we are now done, and we are taking this land. Would you accept that deal?
Okay, so you're saying that you want to, I'm sorry, like you're saying that you want to re-educate the people to be acceptable citizens within Israel. Am I correct?
Not just that. First off, I want them to implement it, right? To show that they can actually do it. And because remember, if they want to be their own government, their own sovereign state, Israel's not providing water and aid, and they are their own sovereign state. They need to implement it. They need to stop all terrorism.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me answer your question. That kind of gives me like, sort of communist, camps, propaganda education vibes, right?
So would you accept it?
Change the people's ideology. No, I don't. And I'll give you, and let me tell you what I think. Now my counter question to you, would you accept that if we can agree that the occupation of the West Bank is not a land grab, it is just Israel's move to protect its own people, right? And I think most Israelis would claim, yes, the occupation of the West Bank was not us wanting to take the land away from the Arab Palestinians, etc. It was us having to defend ourselves, like what happened in Sinai, whatever.
Well, in 1967, that's true, but that doesn't mean that's the same point today.
But let me continue, please. But I didn't reach my point. Just 1 second. If this is the fact that it is not a land grab, right, and it is what Israel did to protect itself, right? They're occupying it to protect itself. Great. So then, what is your, let's try to protect yourself without you occupying it, right? So let's talk there under that framework, which I understand. Listen, I'm a realist, right? I understand that you have the card, you have the power, you have the land. Why should you give it to them for them to attack you? Very, very, logical, right? So I would come to you and I would say, there's a solution to that. The solution is not to re-educate them under your umbrella in the Jewish state, right? That's not a realistic.
I didn't say under umbrella. I said their umbrella.
They're not going to accept that.
Oh, they're not going to accept that. So you agree the two-state solution is dead because they cannot accept that.
But Nick, just give me an opportunity. You're also not going to accept. Israelis are not going to be a minority Jewish state, right?
You're proving my point
let's
more.
Be fucking honest here.
Okay,
both sides are not going to accept a one state.
Okay,
right?
let me respond.
But I haven't responded to your initial thing though.
Okay, but you said a lot. All right.
I know, but I really want to let you go. I don't want any confinements, but I kind of really want to get to my point. And I promise I won't interrupt you, right? So the point that I want to make here, you said that it's not a land grab, it's just occupation to protect yourself. Okay, I agree. So what is the fear? Why are you occupying it? For the Israeli fear of security. Then Israel, having the cards, realistically speaking, they should have a guarantee, right? They should feel to have an appetite to actually give that land back with a guarantee of security. How do you achieve that? I reckon, and this is me answering you, I reckon that it should be a demilitarized Palestine. How do you achieve that? This is another question. I would love to engage with you, but I don't want to take all the time. We can go ahead. You want to say something?
Yes. Okay. So you proved exactly what I've been saying this whole time for a couple reasons. One, you just said that no, you would not accept, especially at that end, if they attack Israel, even after, especially being a demilitarized state, if they attack Israel, Israel gets to go in and take the whole thing and push them all out. If you yourself, the guy that is pushing this the hardest out of everyone I've debated, over 10,000 people. You did. You said no. You said no, I don't accept that. And if you can't accept
I don't accept that you want to put them in camps, re-educate them.
I never said anything about camps. Never once said camps.
Not camps. You want to re-educate them. Let me make it a little sound better. You want to re-educate them.
If you
to make them good guys into, I don't think that's doable.
No, first off,
I don't think that's doable.
No, hold on.
Good boys, what the hell?
A couple things. One, anti-Semitic. I saw that, but that being said, has nothing to do.
I'm a Semite myself.
That's not what anti-Semitic means. Anti-Semitic comes from the word from William Marr. Okay, it has meaning. It actually specifically means Jew hatred. It was created by a guy who was later a Nazi himself, William Marr, who wanted to scientifically make a word. Yeah. Okay, so it does not mean, it's not like the word butterfly means pieces of butters that fly, right? It's not a compound word in that sense. So no, it doesn't matter if you're a Semite. Also, Semite is a linguistic group. It actually isn't even a people. So that being said, it doesn't matter. It has nothing. First off, I never said anything about making people good goys. That's ridiculous. I said if being a good goy means not being a terrorist, and I brought up an example of 3 Molotov cocktails and 5 Jews, how many more Molotov cocktails would you need? Which again is not hyperbole. That's literally what's in their books. If me saying to you, can we remove that? If that turns to you and turns into you want us to be good goys, then there's no discussion to have, because that's exactly what I said. That is word for word what I said.
Nick, let me respond to it.
I have to respond to a lot to what you said. You went on for a while.
Go ahead.
Right?
Should we go back to the two-layer framework thing?
Maybe, but just let me respond to this. If you can't even guarantee that, if you hear me saying, hey, can we remove Molotov cocktails and killing Jews out of books? If you hear that and you hear you want us to be good goys, then you have proven beyond all doubt that the two-state solution is dead, because you sound like, well, from what I can tell, sort of, I don't know you, kind of a moderate. So if you can't even guarantee it, I don't trust the Palestinians. And also, you said one more sentence. I promise, one more sentence. Then on top of that,
saying you want to
one more, Dr. One more sentence.
No, Nick, wait.
Just one more sentence. I think there's a delay because you're cutting in and out. Just let me say one more sentence real quick. You said, and I quote, that the Israelis would never accept this, and you gave examples, and you said the Palestinians wouldn't accept this, and you gave examples. You are proving my point, because I agree with you. You're right. They would never accept it, meaning the two-state solution is dead.
Okay, thank you. But please give me the time to answer all of those points. First of all, that actually proves that the two-state solution is the only viable option. You want to say, hey, you see those Palestinian people? I want to re-educate them on my own terms, which I consider, re-education. No, dude, Nick, come on, man.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I didn't say that. I said they should re-educate.
I didn't say a lot of things you also said, but I held my own and let you finish. Come on.
I guess we have to go back to the debate structure. Let me 2 minutes each.
Let me finish my point. So what I'm trying to say here is that no, you want to re-educate them under your own terms. That's not how it works, right? They are a different people, different nation. You also cannot. The Israelis themselves will not accept a population of Palestinians, right? That could be once the majority and not make it the Jewish state they want. I reckon if we do a poll right now and say, hey, everybody, Israelis and Palestinians, let's vote. Would you, Palestinians, how about you be re-educated and, we kind of reassign your brain to accepting the undignified situation, and you become Israelis, right? And hey, Israelis, you're going to have a new 7 million people that are not Jews and might, overcome your vote system and then, not make it the Jewish state. Both sides will say absolutely no, right? This is an example. This is an example of how it is dead, right? This is an example of there is no way that would work, right? Now, what I'm saying this whole time, right, and listen, I really want you to hear this part because it's very important. Both of me and you agree about the obstacles that exist under the two-state solution, right? And the whole world agrees that the only viable framework that the whole world has presented is a framework of a two-state solution. It just needs a little fixing here and there to make it doable, right? So my whole argument, right, is the two-state solution is not dead. If you have 180 countries in the UN claiming the two-state solution is the way to go, right? If you have the United States, your country, officially saying the two-state solution is the way to go, right? But not having really the political appetite to go through with it, then I reckon, listen, Nick, the only thing we're looking at is a two-state solution. But what we should discuss actually, right, it's not whether it's dead or not, because, we all have the reality of it. It's not dead. It's actually the only way we can go through, right? What we should discuss is how can we not, how can we go over those obstacles, right? Whether we can discuss a demilitarized Palestine, whether we can discuss how to achieve a demilitarized Palestine.
But I have brought up those questions.
Whether we discuss the land swabs, whether we discuss Jewish communities that stay in Palestine, et cetera, right?
Okay, it's been over 2 minutes. Okay, perfect, thank you. So a couple things, right? First off, maybe I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he misunderstood. I never once said re-educate under terms. In fact, I said the exact opposite. I said, no, I want them to actually do it, because if they're going to be their own state with their own government, they should actually prove that they can actually govern their own people. So I actually never said that. I said the exact opposite. And by the way, anyone can rewind, re-listen to this. I have only said one thing under re-education. I never once said to make them Israeli good goys. None of that ever came out of my mouth. I said remove the push to terrorism. And I even gave an example that, by the way, is a real example. I didn't even make that one up. That actually came from an UNRWA school book, That's all I said. So if you're telling me that quote unquote being Israeli and re-educating them, because you said, and I quote, I wrote the quote down, you said they are a different people. if that is your answer to me asking to remove terrorism, you have proven that that is always who they're going to
That's not my
be,
answer. I
especially
agree
for the
with civil
foreseeable
terrorism.
future. What'd you say?
No, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not fair. That's gaslight. Listen, Nick.
You did. What did I? Let me
no
just ask
more
you a quick
terrorism.
question so I can get back to my
Let's be
time.
fair.
I'll ask you a quick question. Did
Are we doing
I
time now?
ever? Did I? No, I still have a
Yeah,
whole minute.
after Nick, when you're done, we're gonna go back to the debate structure. It's more
Well,
fair.
let me just
2 minutes each.
first off, you say you didn't say that, but anyone can re-listen to this recording, and all I have said with re-education the entire time, I never said anything different, was to just simply pull out the calls for terroristic attacks against Jewish people, and not even just Jewish people, Israelis, whether they're Arab or Jewish, because there's a lot of Arabs that were killed even on October 7th. But regardless, that is all I said, and you responded to that, and I'm going to hope that maybe it's just because you misheard me, but you did respond to that by saying, no, Nick, there are different people, you shouldn't re-educate them in that. If you cannot agree to being re-educated out of just terrorism and using Molotov cocktails on Jews, not even IDF, Jews, then I have no interest in creating a bridge with you. And as for, and this is my last sentence, as for, well, the whole world wants it, so therefore you should want it too. And the whole world has failed for 78 years. So how is that working for you?
Okay, Ahmed.
All right, we're gonna start the timer. 2 minutes each, guys.
Yeah, okay,
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay,
I'm
so
gonna be strict now.
Okay, so he's not arguing that Palestinians should be re-educated into becoming Israelis or Goys or whatever. Okay, you are arguing that any future Palestinian state would first need to demonstrate that it can govern responsibly, eliminate, terrorism, violence, and prevent, terrorism. Okay, that's a fair clarification, no problem. But I want everyone here to listen very carefully. Even after that clarification, what are we discussing? We are discussing the conditions under which a Palestinian state could exist. We are still discussing the requirements, which means we are discussing a two-state solution. We are discussing the benchmark, right? We are discussing the security guarantees. We are discussing the governance standards. All of those arguments are about what a future Palestinian state would need to look like, right? And they are not arguments that a Palestinian state is impossible. This is my point. And I think that this is where, the disagreement remains with him, right? My opponent keeps presenting conditions, right? That he believes these conditions must be met before statehood, right? I may agree with some of these conditions. I may disagree with others, but that's not actually the debate we're having. The debate is whether the two-state solution is dead, right? Whether the Palestinians can have a state, right? Because even if I accepted every single condition that he just listed, every single condition, Nick, if I accepted all of them, then what the conclusion would be, Nick? It would be that, not that the two-state solution would be impossible, it would be that a Palestinian state would exist. Hence, if I, agreed with all of your conditions, right, then you would agree to a two-state solution, right? So this is a fundamentally important aspect here. And I think that it's been the pattern throughout this discussion. Every time we get to the heart of the matter, we end up discussing what would be required for a future sort of agreement, right? The security, education, demilitarization, governance, etc., borders, settlements, whatever, right? All of those are implementation questions. None of them demonstrate that it is impossible to create the state of Palestine. And that is why I continue to say that what has been demonstrated tonight is not death of the Palestinian state. It is delay of the Palestinian state. It is a solution that is dead and has no conceivable path forward, right? It is not that. A solution that is delayed faces conditions that have not yet been met. And if I accepted all of his conditions, then he would, concede that a Palestinian state should be, given, which is a two-state solution.
All right, cool. Nick?
Okay, yeah, so
10 seconds.
Yeah, so to say, we're discussing it, so therefore it proves my point that a two-state solution is not dead. You can discuss anything. That has never been my argument. The reason I said it is dead is because it's not realistic, not because you can't discuss something. You can discuss literally anything. That doesn't make it realistic. We can discuss a one-state solution, and we can discuss the option of ethnically cleansing every single Arab out or every single Jew out. You can even go even further with your extremism. We can have a discussion about we should unalive, sorry, I'm using TikTok language, kill every single Jew or Arab in the land, vice versa, whatever, and that would lead to peace and stability because the other one wouldn't exist and we'd have a one-state solution. Does that make it realistic? Of course it doesn't make it realistic. So by saying we're discussing it, so therefore there's a two-state solution framework, is ridiculous because my argument isn't that we can't discuss it. My argument is that it's not realistic. I am going off of also your logic, by the way. I'm not even necessarily saying with my arguments and my discussions and my questions, that doesn't even mean that I am particularly in agreement with those stuff. I'm simply saying, fine, if we're going with your logic, can you answer these? And by the way, you haven't been able to, or you do answer and you say, no, I don't accept that. So it's, again, it's further proving my point. For me, the land of Judea and Samaria holds some of the most important parts of the Jewish people, and I would not accept that to be a Palestinian state ever. And of course, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for like the state of Israel, or even maybe more center or left wing is pro-Israelis. I'm speaking for myself, but that's my logic. Now, of course, you did say, that it doesn't have to be certain areas, and I do respect that. And you said, hey, it can actually be land swaps in certain areas. I actually respect that. I do. However, it still wouldn't work out. The idea of a two-state solution to me is nothing more than a three-state solution, because in 1921, before the Emirate of Transjordan was created, Palestine included all of that, and 78% of that was actually taken out. 10,000 plus Jews were actually ethnically cleansed from that area, and that was the state of Palestine. They actually cut that off. It was 78%. There's still no calls for a free Palestine in that area, and we're not talking about a small chunk. We're talking about a very large chunk of 78%. That was the state of Palestine. That went to the Arabs, and most of them are Palestinians today. So a two-state solution today is nothing more than just cutting off another piece of land, which is 3 states. I think that's 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Withem. Yeah.
Oh, that's very generous of time. Okay. Let me jump in here and say, listen, I think we have finally identified the disagreement. You see, a few minutes ago, my opponent was arguing that the two-state solution is dead. Now he's saying it's not realistic, right? And these are not the same claim, okay? Something can be difficult, unlikely or unrealistic in the short term, but it cannot be dead. I'll give you an example, right? You said that we can discuss something even when it's dead. I don't see anybody discussing the Soviet Union, right? And the is the Soviet Union dead or not? Because we all know that the Soviet Union is dead. I don't think any of the Balkans are discussing Yugoslavia, right? Because they all know it's dead. But we are discussing the Palestinian state because it's not dead, right? And that's very clear and very. I'm sorry, that's a very weak argument that you just made, right? That we're discussing it doesn't mean does not mean that it's not dead. No, in fact, discussing the framework and talking about the technicalities of how the two-state solution would work is a prime example that the two-state solution is not dead. It needs just more discussion and more reform, right? Now, having said that, that is a very important thing in our debate today, right? It's very important that people realize this. That he just proved right now that it's not dead. This is not the Soviet Union we're talking about. It's not Yugoslavia that we're talking about. It's not East Germany. This is a real possibility in the future in a standing issue that is not yet solved. It's not dead. It's very quite alive. And again, something can be difficult. It can be unlikely. It can be even unrealistic in the short term. Still not dead, right? The Berlin Wall looked permanent until it wasn't. Right? The Arab-Israeli peace with Egypt once looked unrealistic until it fucking happened. Excuse my language. Many political outcomes look unrealistic right up until the moment they occur, right? So I think we need to be very careful with our definitions here. If by dead, my opponent means, I personally don't think it is likely in the near future, then that's a very different argument from saying it is impossible. And throughout this debate, I have been responding to the actual motion. Dead means no viable path of existence. Dead means it cannot happen. Dead means there is no conceivable political route forward. I have not heard that being demonstrated. I think something else very important happened. I think my opponent just openly acknowledged that part of his position comes from the fact that he personally would never accept, quote unquote, Judea and Samaria becoming part of the Palestinian state. And listen, I respect his honesty. But that actually proves my point, because this is an argument about what he wants, not an argument about what is possible.
Okay, Tom.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I agree. This is an argument about what I want, because you're debating me. You're not debating BB. If you debated him, you probably get different arguments. But yeah, this is my debate. He said I changed my argument to say not realistic. I never changed that. That was in my opening argument. Again, people can just listen to or just listen to the recording. It was in my opening statement. I've been saying that literally the entire time. As for they're not discussing Yugoslavia, yeah, there's a very clear microscope that's put on Palestine, and that is because really I don't think anyone's actually fully interested in the Palestinians. I think people are interested in Jews, and because they're interested in Jews, Palestinians have attached themselves along for the ride. I do not believe in Palestinians as an ethnicity. Palestinianism is an ideology, especially politicized in the 1960s, and they have attached themselves along for the ride for the Jews. If it wasn't the Jews and they had any other enemy in the world, no one would be talking about it, and this would just disprove this idea of this two-state solution. People aren't talking about the other side because they simply don't care, and they care more about the Jews. That's just simply, that is true. As for again, to go back to what I'm saying about this not realistic, again, we can continue to talk about this stuff over and over and over. My argument is very simple. It's not dead because we can't continue to talk about it. You can always talk about stuff. I'm sure somebody could talk about a 30-state solution. I'm being a little hyperbolic, but not really, okay? That doesn't make it realistic. My argument is very simple, that it's not realistic. Palestinians have embedded their culture, has completely gone to barbarism, and terrorism, and you can actually, no, you can't. I was going to say you can maybe work that out of them, but even when I try to just argue about trying my hardest to remove that, right? You couldn't even agree with that by saying, again, they're a different people. I agree with you. They are a different people, and their people have pushed towards barbarism and terrorism, and their identity has been based off of calling themselves victims against the Yahudis. And if that is what their entire identity is based off of, which it is, if you remove that out, their identity doesn't exist anymore. You cannot do that to them. Their identity is based off of that, then none of the answers I want are going to get answered. Go ahead.
So, this is a big problem we have here. So, now he keeps changing his argument, and maybe this is because of the discussion. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But, his argument is no longer about borders or security arrangements, etc. It's about Palestinians are incapable of statehood, right? That, this is a very different argument from saying the two-state solution is dead. Because if the argument is that Palestinians can never sort of govern themselves and can never reform institutions, can never build a state, then, can never meet sort of his security requirements, then what we're debating is not the viability of a two-state solution anymore. We're debating the nature of a people, right? And this is, I think, this has shifted the debate because my position has always been straightforward. A two-state solution is difficult, yes. It requires reform, absolutely. It requires security guarantees. I've proven that in this discussion. It requires political leadership, which lacks, right? It requires compromises on both sides. Yes, I agree. But my opponent's position now appears to be that the Palestinian people, instinctively, fundamentally, are incapable of meeting those conditions. And that is a claim I absolutely reject, and I think it is different entirely. And importantly, it does not prove a two-state solution is dead. And I want to ask, after I finish what I'm saying, I want to ask this question very clearly to you. I want you to give me the conditions, right, of a two-state solution that you think is doable, right? I want you to do that right now. And we'll listen to it. And you said you're not Bibi Netanyahu. Let's just role play here, and let's just see how we can figure this out. You give me the conditions, and let's see if if we can get into a solution at the end, right? Before
your mic is cutting in and out a little bit, Dr. Hota.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can go to
Guys,
some.
let me Ahmed, let me recycle. Yeah, let me
recycle. Recycle. Nick, you said that, for example, you're not going to give them a state because they'll be dangerous or conduct terrorist attacks against Israel. What are you going to do with them? The Gazans, the West Bank Palestinians, are you going to kick them out, displace them? That didn't work out. So they're not just going to vanish. That's a problem that Israel has to face. What are they going to do with it?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, again, that's not really the argument here. We're talking about if a two-state solution, but to answer, okay, then what is the solution? Again, it's just not the argument. I don't think everything actually has a solution in that aspect. And before anyone tries to be like, see, he just said, I'm not saying that there isn't a solution. I'm just saying to try to shift the conversation if a two-state solution is dead versus, you now need to give me an entire solution right now, and then I get to poke holes in your solution, therefore proving the two-state solution is alive. I really have no interest in that. But that being said, I've never changed my argument. He keeps saying that. I've made it very clear that it's.
I think you're also like rubber band.
Sorry, what?
I think you're rubber banding because also I'm trying to pick up.
Yeah, I can't hear you guys. Yeah, it's very cutting in and out.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can I have my?
I'm gonna recycle too. I don't know if that'll work. Can you guys give me a second? I don't know if you guys heard that. I'm just going to assume he did. I'll be right back.
All right. No problem.
Ahmed, guys, please. Let's wait. Let's wait for him to come back. I want him to hear what I want to say.
All right, guys. Like and share the space. Desire.
Give them the land back, their own land, right?
Can you guys hear me?
The terrorism. We can hear you. Terrorism is a problem. Yeah. All of the points he pointed out is not something that I instinctively disagree with, right? The whole world doesn't disagree with it, right? The question here is whether the two-state solution is the pathway to the peace, right, or not, right? And the problem is 186 countries agree that the two-state solution is the way to peace, including his country, the United States, including all the countries in the region, right? And the problem, he has not said, listen, I have a better plan. I have one. Not only did he not prove that it is dead, right? He also did not even give us something that will kill it, which is something that is more doable, right? What he said was, correct me after I'm finished if I'm wrong, you basically said there's ways that the Palestinians could deal with this. Whether they can get the fuck out of here and go to Jordan, right? Or they can, assimilate, which you said it does not mean be good guys. Okay, I agree. And then third is, if you're a terrorist and you die, right? If you want to be a terrorist and die, right? And being a terrorist means that you reject the other two plans, which is, come on, man. Like I reject that motion completely. So what I'm saying here is that we have a two-state solution we can discuss, right? Security guarantees, absolutely, right? The only pathway to this ending, because you try to push, not you, sorry, the Israelis tried to push the Palestinians out. It just failed, right? It's not like you have another option you're holding back. You tried to ethnically cleanse them. You tried to.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm having a really hard time hearing. I don't know if I'm cutting out too, but I can barely hear what he's saying. I heard some of it, but.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear Dr. Huda very well.
I think the problem is with
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
just
Murat, Love, Alan, guys, can you hear us well? Can you like give us a thumbs up if you can hear Nick very well?
And if you can hear me very well. So yeah, let me just
let me try like closing out of the entire like app and coming back in. Just give me 1 second.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Take your time.
Is the live choppy? The live's not choppy, right? My guess is that it's probably, since I don't know how X Spaces work, but if Ahmed's the host, I wonder if like it's his internet that's causing it not to like, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's the case, but.
Regional benefits. If the Palestinian state is established, well, give me another topic.
No, I'm saying that, you know, what I'm just trying to say, you know, continue what I was saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
You are kind of glitching out a little bit, Dr. Huda. I don't know what is wrong.
I think you have a space problem. I think it's not even my problem.
I was gonna ask. I do
hear, that's why.
I do hear you guys a little bit better now, but I was gonna ask. I don't know how spaces work because this is my first time. Does the host have like the overall internet connection? Because if there's something wrong with the host,
yeah, he's a host. But Ahmed, let's try. You guys can hear me now properly, right? I don't think you guys have a problem, right?
I have a very good internet. I can hear you, Dr. Huda.
I can hear you. I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay. By the way, the recording, everybody will hear it perfect in the recording. There's no lag in the recording. And I think everybody down there, you know, they'll let us know if they can't really hear.
I need you to repeat. I need you to repeat everything you said because I didn't really hear any
Absolutely, I would love to do that. Listen, Nick. What I'm trying to come, you know, here. The debate that we agreed to have, because I think before we did this debate, we had a lot of topics that, you know, we kind of wanted to debate, but we ended up, you know, agreeing on all of them, right? So we kind of didn't want to debate them, right? Because we kind of agree, right? And this particular subject is where I think we could have a discussion and we can, you know, have a good conversation, which is the two-state solution dead or not, right? And I think that, and this is, I believe what is demonstrated today, is that what happened is you keep, and I want you really to reply to this issue right here. You keep bringing me obstacles, which again, I agree with the obstacles. You keep saying, yeah, but you know, there's no security. Why would we give them land and then they would attack us? I agree, right? But why didn't they do that when Sinai was an issue? You did give land back to the Egyptians. The Egyptians never attacked you. So history did give us examples of peace could be done in a two-state solution framework, right? Giving land back to the Palestinians is not an impossible thing. We saw that in Sinai, right? We saw that in Gaza in 2005. So these things have been done in the past. It's not like it's not doable. It's not dead. It's actually very doable.
I mean, Gaza is a terrible example.
And then you keep saying if we discuss it, wait, you keep saying that if we discuss something, that means that it's, you know, does not mean that it is not dead. I reckon, my friend, that nobody here is discussing, you know, whether the Soviet Union is alive or not, and whether that the Soviet Union should come back or not should be. No, because everybody knows it's dead. Nobody's discussing Yugoslavia because everybody knows Yugoslavia is dead, right? But you know, you also said that the discussion about the two-state solution is important because the Jews are important, right? It's only because of the Jews are important. I will absolutely reject and disagree with you. I reckon that from, you know, the region itself. For Saudi Arabia itself, the Palestinian issue is very important, right? The Palestinians living, you know, under these conditions is a very chronicle problem that has created more problems in the region, right? You know, when the Houthis say death to America, death to Israel, and damn the Jews, they're basing it on that. Even if they're not honest, they're basing their terrorism on that, right? When you have Hezbollah in Lebanon, they're basing it on that, right? Whether they're really actually fighting for Palestinian state or not doesn't matter. They're using it. They're using it on that, right? So we can establish that it is actually a problem and it is actually alive. And it's not only because you think the Jews are the important part, right? Both peoples are important. Human life is important, right? Dignity is important for both of them, right? I don't have a problem with the Jewish self-determination in that land, but I have a problem with how the Palestinians are living under occupation. And you are not telling me how that could end. You're telling me to get the fuck out of their homes, right? Or I decide whether he is behaving well, right? Or he can die. That's literally your solution. And that is not a solution. My solution is very clear. My solution is the solution of the 186 countries in the world, which is the two-state solution, two-state framework, right? We can discuss it. We can say, yeah, security guarantee. Yeah, border dispute. Yeah, land swaps. And I think, listen, I would concede to something. Maybe you would be surprised. I understand that Israel is the one that has the power here. I understand that Israel is the one that needs to take the leap. It has to be attractive for them, right? That's why I reckon that it should be a demilitarized Palestine. That's why I reckon that, concessions should be given regarding settlements and, the right to return and whatnot. Go ahead.
Is it a permanent? Is it? I just have some questions first. Is it a permanent demilitarization?
Listen, what does permanent mean? Nothing is really permanent. But yes, it should be non-negotiable that it is. It should be not under a framework. It should be, this is a demilitarized country, and this is how it's going to be. Just like how Germany was demilitarized. Just how
is
Japan
it
was demilitarized.
permanent?
None of them. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, permanent demilitarization. And if they deny that, they say no, of course not. Just like Hamas is already denying it, let alone every single Palestinian. What are you going to do?
Hamas doesn't. First of all, Hamas never denied a two-state solution.
No. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Nope. I'm talking about demilitarization. If they say no, of course we're not going to do that.
Then they're an obstacle. Then.
Okay, what are you going to do? Okay, let's talk. What are we going to do?
Nick,
you said let's role play. You said let's role play. Tell me what you're going to do to force that.
We'll do that. Fantastic. We'll do that. I would love to do that. But you have to concede that we're doing that under the framework of the two-state solution, not because
we're doing it to show you that it's not realistic. No, we're doing it to show you that it's...
Because because we don't have any other discussion to actually... You can't convince me otherwise. The best thing you can do is say, this is the problem. You cannot say, this is why it can never happen, and here's the solution.
Listen, you're not understanding. Okay, hold on. I have already answered this. Us discussing it does not at all mean anything. I get what you're trying to say.
Why are we not discussing your solution? Because it's unrealistic. Because it's dead.
Well, that's exactly. You just proved my point because it is unrealistic, and now I'm going to get you.
Your solution is not even able to be able, to get into the discussion, right? But the two-state solution is.
It is. It's not. It's not, and I'm going to prove it because you're not going to be able to answer these, or you're not going to be able to answer it realistically. So a couple things. One, before I ask my question again, you brought up Gaza as an example. Gaza is the one that proved otherwise. That was the worst example in the world you could have given. Gaza was.
I never mentioned Gaza as anything.
You did. Everyone can go listen to what he just said in his last rebuttal. He literally said Gaza in 2005.
Didn't what's his name? Do you occupy Gaza in 2005?
Right, you brought that up as an example. That Israel left Gaza in 2005.
Give me his name. Give me his name, please. What's this guy?
Yeah, yes. Yasser Arafat, who?
No, not the Israeli guy. What's his name? What is the guy before Olmert? What's his name?
Are you asking for the prime minister?
Sharon.
Sharon in 2005, he left Gaza, right? This is an example.
So you did say that, right? And that's the worst example you could have given because Gaza
and Sinai is another example. Sinai is another great example.
Well, no, because that's first off, that's different. That's an area that's already a state. We're not talking about that. Palestine's not a state. I get you want it to be, but it's not. That's apples.
Well, it's recognized in 182 countries as the right to become a state. So
I don't really care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't follow the Hold on. It doesn't follow the Montevideo Conference. I don't really care about what virtue signalers say. I'm talking about realism.
But again.
Wait, hold on. I want to get back to the questions. Can you answer my question?
Relax.
Go ahead. No, you're good. You're good. I want you to answer my questions. If the Palestinians say no, of course we're not going to demilitarize. Because if we do, then Israel's going to attack us and whatever excuse they give. What are you as Saudi Arabia? I'm America or / Israel's leader. You're Saudi Arabia's. What are you going to do to force them to? You better say yes. What are you going to do?
All right. Okay. So something very interesting happened here. He what he mentioned right now is that you're saying that you're okay with the two-state solution. You're just not okay with obstacles in it. I'm going to answer you.
Not even a little bit. I promise you that's not what I'm doing. I'm going to show you guys why it's not realistic.
I didn't even reach my premise though. Just give me 30 seconds.
No, but I don't need a premise. I need an answer.
Dude, yeah, but it's not. It doesn't work that way. You have to give me time to answer, okay? So, what's his name? Said the finance minister of Israel. He said he said very clearly. He said Hamas is a asset and Fatah is a liability. Why he said that is exactly what he's doing now, because he's using Hamas to make it seem that look, see Hamas.
I'm not using
we can't
Hamas.
have a two-state solution. We can't have a two-state solution. See, Hamas exists.
Dr.
Listen, I
Hooker,
agree with you.
that's not
Hamas
what
is
I'm
an obstacle that should
let
be
me,
removed.
Doctor, let me
Okay,
just
I
say
will
one
answer
thing real
you,
quick.
dude.
Just one thing real quick, okay? I have forfeited this 2 minutes back and forth with the understanding that you'd be able to answer to prove that this is a dead
Have you
two
forfeited?
thing.
Okay.
Right? Right, yeah, because I could have just went off on my 2 minutes and we could have done that back and forth, but I want to show
Okay.
everyone.
But it doesn't mean you own the rest of the time the way you want it.
No,
Like, you
it's
want
not
to ask
about
a
that,
question.
but that's not what I'm saying, Doctor. What I'm saying is that I did it with the assumption to show people, fine, let's negotiate and let me prove that it's actually dead because it's not realistic.
Let's do that.
But you're not
when
answering
I
my
answer
questions.
you, when I
But you're
answer
not
you, you have to
answering my
give me the time to
question.
answer.
If
I
you
will. I
answer,
promise you, Nick. Listen to me. I'll answer your questions. You just have to wait a little bit for the answer. You
but I
can't
don't.
jump in. It's not a yes or no. It's
I didn't
nuanced.
ask
You
for
have
a
to wait
yes
for
or
the
no.
answer.
I just asked if you
Okay,
would
go
answer
ahead.
the
Ask your
question.
question. Ask your question. Go ahead. Ask your question.
Okay, I'm gonna ask it again. So if you said, yeah, it's gonna be a permanent demilitarization state, okay, fine. If they say no, of course we're not gonna do that. Whether it's immediately they say no or after 5 years they say no, it doesn't matter. If they say no, how are you going to force that implementation as Saudi Arabia or
Okay,
whoever?
first of all, your premise is that they are going to say no, which is a problem. And
I'm
I'll answer
saying
your
if.
question.
I'm
Oh
saying
my God,
if.
dude, Ahmed, he's not letting me answer his questions, man. Like, just let me answer your question and then tell me what's the problem.
You
No,
said you don't want the debate structure. Why are you asking for help? Fix it
I'm not
out
asking
between you
for help.
guys.
I'm just asking for him not to interrupt me. So answering your question, Nick, no, Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people, even officially.
I didn't say
Even
that.
officially in the UN, it's not the Palestinians. It's not the Hamas people that represent the Palestinian people. It is actually the Fatah. So when you discuss with me about people disagreeing to demilitarization, you don't bring up Hamas disagreeing to
I never brought up
demilitarization.
Hamas.
You bring up Fatah disagreeing with demilitarization. Now, again, I don't think that Fatah will ever disagree with the demilitarization. But you bring me a theoretical scenario that if they disagree to demilitarization, right, then they become an obstacle of a two-state solution. But they have proven, the PA, right, they are not very disagreeable people when it comes to solving their issues, right? So even your theoretical situation is very much unrealistic, right? If you would have told me that Hamas would not agree to a permanent demilitarization,
I didn't
now
say.
you would have an argument here. Let me finish. You would have an argument here, right? But you didn't say that. You said the representatives of the Palestinians will disagree for a permanent demilitarization. Now, what comes into my mind, who is the representative of the Palestinian people? The PA is the official representative of the Palestinian people, right? So then the question should be, do you think the PA will reject a demilitarized Palestine? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They will not reject a demilitarized
And if they
Palestine,
do,
right?
which was my question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let me say a couple things real quick.
What if it starts raining frogs tomorrow? Like, you
Yeah,
can't
that's not the
answer
same thing because that's not literally
theoretical
possible.
Well,
Whereas
well,
Al-Aqsa,
well, then we go.
who are the
Then,
who are
then
the
we
who
go. Then,
all day?
if that
Okay,
happens, Nick, if that happens, if today Mahmoud Abbas says we are not going to demilitarize, right, and we do not agree for that concept, right, then you can have an argument to what you're saying, but that's not the
right.
fact of the
Who's the
reality.
Al-Aqsa?
You're
Who's the
bringing me a
Al-Aqsa Martyrs
hypothetical.
Brigades? Who's the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades?
These are not Fatah. These are not.
They
These are not
are.
Mahmoud Abbas. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
Al-Aqsa's Martyrs Brigades is a Fatah coalition.
Yes, but
Hold on.
did you say that this is the two-state solution
One
and you
sec.
have to be demilitarized and this is the pathway to a demilitarized? No, wait.
Okay,
Did you say that this is the path? Wait, Nick. Did you say
you
this is
keep
the
telling me to
pathway to a
wait, but you're not answering my questions.
Nick, you gotta let me finish. Did you say that this is the pathway to a demilitarized Palestine, right? And Mahmoud Abbas here, this is the pathway to a Palestine. It has to be demilitarized, and he said no. That's a different argument. But you're not saying to Mahmoud Abbas in reality that this is a pathway to a Palestinian state. It has to be demilitarized. You're saying demilitarized, and there is no Palestinian state, right? Now that's different when you bring up the brigades and whatnot. The brigades were not offered, hey, listen, put your arms down. You're gonna get a Palestinian state. Both parties agreed, and this is the pathway, right? And then you said, look, they didn't put their arms down. That's not what happened, right? And once you make that happen, and they don't put their arms down, then you can come and talk to me. But the fact of the matter is, what you actually said was, we're not talking about Palestinian statehood. You can't have a state. Now put your arms down. And you expect them to say, okay, I'll put my arms down. This is ridiculous, right? This is ridiculous. And let me make something very clear. Me personally, I think that the arms resistance matter is ridiculous, and it's not going to get them a Palestinian state. In fact, and a lot of people who listen to me know this. I reckon that if anything, they are a scapegoat for the Israelis to push Palestinians out of Gaza and to push Palestinians out of their homes, because they do need a Hamas for them to actually physically, militarily push people out of Gaza and actually do what you want, which is either transfer, die, or good going, right?
Again,
and this is, I'm just, you didn't say
again,
that. But I'm saying,
again,
what you
the
kind
whole
of
point. Yes, it's just again, I wanted to do a role play. Did not want this to be like, oh, I'm going to take 3 minutes to go on and on. This is not the point I'm making. But if we have to do it that way, then we can do it that way. But then we're never going to get to the point that I'm trying to prove, which is It's unrealistic because, again, I asked if they said that. And again, can I just get at least a yes or no or a short answer with this? I'm asking a question. It is not to go off for 3 minutes. Will the state of Palestine have elections?
Excuse me?
Will the state of Palestine have elections?
So how is this disproving a two-state solution?
I will get to it. I'm just asking you, will
why,
the
why does that
state of...
concern you? Why does that concern you? How a
Because
people
it'll
decide
have
to
my
govern
follow-up
themselves?
question.
How
It'll
does that
have...
the Palestinians, for all what matters, they can make Mahmoud Abbas the king of Palestine,
Okay,
and
perfect.
can be
So
a
it's
dynasty
the Palestinians' choice.
of Mahmoud Abbasis, right?
Great.
That's
Okay.
really none of your
Okay.
business, right?
So
You
I
can't.
agree. No, I
Yeah,
agree
no,
with
no,
you.
no, 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 no. Nick, when you
Okay.
ask a question, I let you talk, but then you ask me the question. You have to listen to the answer. You can't interrupt. So,
But you're going
how the
off
Palestinians
beyond...
govern themselves? How the Palestinians govern themselves should not be your concern,
You
right?
said
Just
this
like
already.
how Israel governs itself, whether it's a democracy or not, should not be Palestinians'
You
concern,
already
right?
said this. I
So,
got that, and we
yeah,
agree.
okay, all right, good that you understood it. Go ahead.
Right, but yeah, because you said it 3 times. We agree. So the Palestinians will have a say. So when you sit here and say, oh, well, the Mahmoud Abbas, he will agree to a permanent demilitarized state, even if I believed you, which I don't because they still fund terrorism to this day, but even if somehow I believed that, okay? So what? Mahmoud Abbas is in almost single digits in popularity. The second the Palestinians want, they will throw him out at very best. I mean, gosh, maybe something else would happen, but they would throw him out, assuming there isn't a civil war and a land grab for territory amongst the Arabs and they're fighting internally. Let's just say it's all smooth and they're all good. They don't want Mahmoud Abbas. So even if you can guarantee it for me for a year or 2 or whenever they decide to have a new leader, or Mahmoud Abbas just dies, he's getting kind of old, right? That's assuming he becomes a dictator and he says, no elections, I don't care, screw you guys, I'm going to be president forever, right? Even if that's the case, they don't want him. So the second the Palestinians, and I will repeat the statistic I mentioned earlier, that the military wing of Hamas got an 89% approval, not just in Gaza, but in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank. And so the second they can, just like they did in Gaza, after only 4 months, they will vote in one of these organizations and they will absolutely reject demilitarization, which is what they wanted in Gaza as well. It didn't matter. They found ways to get weapons in. They attacked Israel. So ignore my education question, re-education question. How about just the question of, again, if you said Saudi Arabia will push this forward, that it will be a permanently demilitarized state. If Palestine breaks that, does Israel get to go in and take the whole land? Ignore the education thing. Answer that one.
Now, did you see how I didn't interrupt you when I let you take your time and I wasn't? I wish that you can do the same so I can get my point across, Nick. Respectfully so we can actually have a discussion. Now, I kind of want to say something very important. Now, you asked a lot of questions. I answered all of them. Now it's my turn, and I want you to answer my questions, okay? Because I've given you more than enough time to answer your questions and prove to you that it is a matter of obstacles that could be, resolved. Even the obstacles you brought to me, you're like, well, are they going to put down their weapons? Yeah, sure. Yeah, they should put down their weapons. See, solved. Obstacle. It could be solvable, right? Should it be demilitarized? Yeah, it should be demilitarized. Obstacle. Solvable, right? Should the Jews be pushed out of the Palestinian lands? Well, no, they shouldn't be pushed out of the Palestinian lands. And in fact, a lot of the debates that were taken in the past and other peace solutions did not mention necessarily that they should be pushed out. There's a lot of ideas, whether they stay under a sovereign Palestine state, whether there would be land swaps. You see all of these things? These are obstacles that could be solved, right? This is an example of the debate we're having of the Palestinian state not dying. The Palestinian state has obstacles. Okay, this is very important because I didn't come to the debate other than we talk about, is the Palestinian state viable, alive, or is the Palestinian two-state solution dead or simply delayed? We keep making the point here that it is simply delayed because of the obstacles. You didn't bring and say, oh, listen, it is dead because it is absolutely undoable because of 1, 2, and 3, right? And by the way, when you say something is dead, right, like the Palestinian statehood, you either have to tell me there's no more Palestinians in Palestine, right? You either have to tell me all the Palestinians have Israeli citizenship and they're okay with this issue, right? Or either you give me another solution that dwarfs the Palestinian two-state solution and it is more viable for a discussion. None of that is done. You neither cleanse them and kick them out. You did not give them citizenship. There's no pathway for that. And you did not make the argument for a plan to solve the problem that is actually more viable than a two-state solution. This is why I keep coming back to you, Nick, and telling you that our best hope for it is the two-state solution. Either you can tell me that, hey, Dr. Hoda, I can actually push the Palestinians out and transfer them. I can actually give them citizenship, and I can actually kill them, right? The 3 things that you mentioned, right? This is something that is actually doable, and yours is not doable because of 1, 2, and 3. Mine is more doable, right? But that's not what you did. You brought me your thing, you know, what you want to do, and it is not doable whatsoever. In fact, they tried, they kept failing. It's not doable. It's not realistic. Nobody in their right mind is proposing it as a solution, right? That's just your, solution. Nobody, no country in the world said, yeah, that three-way solution of either killing them, pushing them out, or making them good guys is actually a good solution. Nobody's having that discussion because it's cartoonish, right? What people are having is saying, hey, are you going to give these people citizenship, right? And have a one state, which is not going to happen because both the Israelis don't want it to be a non-Jewish state and the Palestinians don't want to live in Israel, right? As Israelis, right? So it's not going to happen. And either you give them that or you give them self-determination. We end up with the most realistic end pathway, which is the two-state solution, right?
I get an answer to my question.
That's the only way. That's the only. No, you answer my question. You have to answer my question. I have answered 20 of your questions. Answer this one.
You didn't even answer the question I asked at the very end.
Nick, it is fair. It is fair that you kind of answered one of his questions because, like, he kind of went back and forth in different type of ways to answer your questions. Maybe you weren't satisfied with the answer. Like,
no, he didn't answer my last
question.
I
feel like now it's fair for him. Like, I've seen you like really question him a lot. I think it's fair for him to actually ask you a question.
Sure, I'll fine. If I answer one more question, can I get an answer to the question he still has never answered?
Let's have a one kind. Doctor, can you repeat your question, please?
I mean, I've asked the question a million times, and I've said it again. Either you have a solution that is not cartoonish and more realistic than the two-state solution, because Ahmed, the solution he has is let's either, assimilate them into being good guys, or, kick them out to Jordan and Egypt, or kill them, right? That is the alternative to the two-state solution. Nobody has that discussion, Ahmed. My question to him is that, does he actually think this is a more, is anybody having this discussion? Does he actually think this is a more doable thing than the two-state solution? My question to him is, why hasn't he given me an alternative to the two-state solution? Why hasn't he given me direct evidence that it is dead, like how the Soviet Union is dead, like how Yugoslavia is dead, right? He hasn't done that. What he has done, Ahmed, throughout the night is giving me obstacles, and even the obstacles he brought, I brought solutions to. Even the obstacles that he brought, I gave him examples of the past where solution happened, right? I gave him examples of how the land swaps were something discussed. It's not an issue of ethnically cleansing Jewish people. I gave him examples of how Sinai was given back, right? Peace for land,
this is
peace for land.
This is just another 2 minutes.
Ahmed. So let me, Ahmed. My question is clear. Right? The example of the example of Sinai is a real one, right? And my question to him that he has failed to answer is the occupation of the West Bank a land grab or is it in self-defense? If it's in self-defense, then the concept of a two-state solution is not dead. If it's a land grab, please tell me it's a land grab. Ahmed, that's my question. Go ahead.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, Ahmed, I did answer these already. He repeated these many, many times. So I don't know if I'm answering the first question or the second one. He asked 2 questions in his entire ramble. Let me repeat the questions to make sure I got them right. The first one is he said, he said, why haven't I given him a viable solution? I think that was your question. And then the second question you asked is, was the West Bank a land grab or a what's it called? Self-defense. Are those your questions?
Yes, that's the question. We're looking for an answer. Is like with the West Bank right now, is it occupied or is there like an ongoing
I already answered
grab?
this. Yeah,
Ahmed, you've been in this debate, Ahmed. I've asked him this question. Has he answered it?
Has he
answered
not.
it before?
I gotta be honest, he has
so
not.
I don't know why you keep saying you answered a question you didn't answer, Nick. So
I did.
Answer the question. Don't claim. All right, then answer it again. Let's see. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. And anyone can listen to the recording. With the second question with the West Bank, if it was a land grab or not, I specifically said, actually, I think twice already, that the originally it was just for self-defense, and they offered it even back to Jordan, and they said no to that.
Is it occupied?
Right? Hold on. I'm repeating
protection?
what
Ahmed, not answering my question.
Jesus Christ. I'm repeating what I said earlier because both now the host and the speaker have said that I didn't answer that. I'm repeating what I said so when people re-listen to the recording, they can hear me say it again. So again, things change over time. It was originally for self-defense, and now at this point, from my belief, and I remember saying this exactly. I'm not speaking for the state of Israel. I'm only speaking for myself. And I know you guys remember me saying this, but for me, Judea and Samaria, especially specific parts of it, is Jewish land, and I would not, again, speaking for myself, give up that.
The question is it today, is it occupation land grab, or is it
I answer that as well. It's
protection?
not occupation because we have to accept the premise that it's Palestinian land, and it never has been. I already said that early on in the debate as well. Anyone can go listen to the recording. I already said that. No, I do not consider it occupied.
Wow. Okay, so you don't consider it occupation? No, it is occupation. That's not the question. You see, it is occupation. Israel, everybody agrees it's occupation. That's not the question asked to you. The question asked to you today, not in '67. Today, the occupation, is it land grab or is it for Israel's security? That question is very simple. I don't know why. Listen, Nick,
I don't know why both can't be
you
true. They're
asked
not
me 20
mutually
questions.
exclusive.
Nick, you asked me 20 questions. I answered all of them.
You
You
didn't
failed
answer
to
all of
answer
them.
this one question.
So a
Go
couple
ahead,
things.
answer.
I'll answer it again, and you didn't answer them. I asked actually like 20 times in this debate, would you accept that if they were to attack, because you said that they can choose their leader, they can do whatever they want, and I said fine, even if in a year or 2 or 5 years or whatever, if they were to shift to a different leader and it was an extreme one and they didn't accept demilitarization and they attacked Israel, would you accept that Israel would go in and say done is done, we have tried everything, including what 186 countries wanted, and now we're done?
Ahmed, have I answered his 20 questions? I'm honestly asking you. Like, you've been listening to the debate. Like, is there one question I did not answer? I mean, I feel like every single question he asked, like, I don't know why he keeps going back. Listen, dude, you want to ask another question? You want to ask your question again? You ask it again, I'll answer it. But please do answer that one question that I asked you. And it's not in '67. It is today. Today, it is an occupation. That's not my question, whether it's an occupation or not, right? The question is whether this occupation is for security reasons or for land grab. You either try to say, you didn't answer my questions, or you go ahead and go back to '67. So I don't know why you keep doing that. Go ahead.
So I did both. I said those aren't mutually exclusive. This idea to say that it has to be one or the other, of course it's for security. And again, speaking for myself for like the 30th time, I would absolutely annex it because that is what I consider Judea and Samaria Jewish land. And that doesn't mean,
okay.
hold on. It doesn't mean that Arabs cannot live in the land and all that. I did answer this so many times. I remember because you even said to me that doesn't, hold on. You even said to me when I said that, you even said to me in response to that earlier in the debate, well, it doesn't have to be Judea and Samaria. We can talk about land swaps and all that. Like, I answered that so many times. The fact that the host didn't hear that, I'm sorry, but I don't really care. I've answered that so many times, but you still have not answered. If they attack Israel as a sovereign state of Palestine, would you accept Israel going in and taking all of the land for them as because they've done the last thing that was asked?
Let's get back. Nick, can we go back to the question real quickly? Is it like literally a land grab occupation at the moment, which is illegal by the international law, or is it pretty much for security and protection? And that
he answered it finally, Ahmed. He finally answered it, and he said it is a land grab. He said it is a land grab, right?
I have actually answered it multiple times.
Hold on. I want to highlight because look, I want to highlight that land grab. What do you mean by that? Israel can just take
me or Dr. Hota?
Excessive extra. No, you, Nick. You said.
Am I debating the host? I'm so
occupation
confused.
And land grab. No, I'm just asking this question. I would love to. I know the answer.
It's exactly what Dr. Hota said, but that being said, it's not illegal under international law.
Yes,
it's actually, one second. So it actually isn't illegal under international law. What is actually under international law right now is what's called de facto, right? De facto, and what they fall under the Articles of Geneva Conventions for. However, it is actually disputed, and Israel's claim is that, first off, the occupation of, that you can argue start in 1967, are they occupying Jordan or are they occupying Palestine? Can you guys answer that for me? Since you guys want to call it illegal under international law?
No, they're occupying Palestine. They're occupying Palestine.
Okay, so when was it Palestine, and how can they be occupying it?
Okay, so now you ask a question, and then you don't listen to the answer. Then you say I didn't answer it. So you ask the question, let me answer it. So no, they're occupying Palestine. The West Bank is occupied on international law. This is not a discussion that is even taken. Yes, it is occupied, right? The question was, people ask, is whether the occupation is for land grab or is it for security? Now, the Israelis, the ones that would debate strongly, they would take the side that, no, it's not a land grab. We don't claim West Bank, because Israel officially doesn't claim the West Bank. They call it Judea and Samaria in many of its things, but the official position of Israel is not that this is Israel. They say this is a disputed land. They don't claim it as Israel proper, right? So knowing that, right? So
can we go back to the topic, guys?
Yeah, we will. I will, absolutely. I would love to go back to the topic. So having said that, then the question here remains that it's not a land grab. The official position of Israel is they have to occupy this because of the fact that they need it for their security. This is official. You can say what you want to say, but the official position of Israel is that. It's that. Now, having said that, even the obstacle here that is causing the occupation, right, is the security of Israel not being met. because of, they need to occupy it. So then we come to a place where, okay, Israel, I'll give you that. You occupy because your security is needing to be occupied. So now what we want to do is we need to find a solution to where it can be not occupied and you got your security, right? Now, this could be done in many ways. Many people have ideas. All of the ideas and all of the discussions around it is under the framework of a two-state solution. This is my argument. Ahmed, I'm coming back now to the title. This is my argument to the title. Whatever we discuss today, right, it is under the framework of a two-state solution. It will never be under the framework of anything other than a two-state solution. Hence, the two-state solution is alive. In the discussion everybody listened to tonight, I don't think anybody listened to a proposal from yourself from another sort of peace plan that is not a two-state solution. All you've done tonight repeatedly was saying, this is the problem with the two-state solution. And again, I would say, hey, I agree, right? This is the problem, but this is the solution. And if it fails, numbers 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 does not mean that, by evidence that 11 will fail, right? It means that, you can try 11, 12, 13, 14 might hit. It doesn't mean that it is impossible. It means that it could be unrealistic. As you said, it doesn't mean that it is impossible. What is unrealistic today is possible tomorrow. And the proof I give you, is the Syrian country. If me and you had this discussion before Syria was united again, right? None of us would say that HTS would be able to actually make a Syria united into one country. They would all say, oh, look at that, terrorist that has no possibility to make it to a country. Guess what we have today? Everybody recognizes Jolani as the president of Syria. So don't you come to me and say, no, you can't. Let me finish first. You can't come to me and say you can't come to me and say what is impossible. Oh my God. What is impossible is that, could happen. No, you could say today there's obstacles, tomorrow it could happen.
Can you answer my question now?
Excuse me?
Yeah, I accept the 5-minute rants and I got you. Can you answer my question now? You said you've answered 20 questions. You have not. No, my question was once again. No, my question. Okay. My question.
You listen. You don't listen, Nick.
My question yet again is that if I'm just asking the same question.
I asked him for another solution.
Once again.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Hold on, both of you. Okay, I'm gonna put the notes app right now. I'm gonna write down the question. We're not gonna come back to it ever again. Let's start one more time. Go through all the questions. All right. I do believe all of you at the moment answer the questions. I don't know why I have to go back to it. Maybe it's because you guys are not
nobody believes that he has answered the question.
Ahmed, he didn't. Ahmed, did he give a proposition to another solution other than two-state solution? Something I've been asking for the last 2 hours.
Okay.
Did you hear one, Ahmed? I'm asking you.
When do I get to speak?
He gave the 3. Look, Nick.
Is that a viable? Okay, let's.
Doesn't matter if it's viable or not. I answered the question. It doesn't matter if you think.
Let me hear. Let's hear Nick. Hold on.
Okay, answer the question, Nick. Go ahead.
I already answered, and even the host said I answered. You may not like my answer, and that is irrelevant if you like it or not. I answered, and in the other question, because you've now asked 2 without answering my question, you even admitted that I answered the question. You said, no, Nick did answer. He finally answered. So I have answered both questions many times. I'm going to keep speaking because I have not been able to speak. I've been very, very nice.
Dude, this is not you just asking questions.
Hold on,
listen, I'm okay answering all of your questions.
Hold on, guys.
Yep.
Okay.
Finish off. We'll go back to the 2 minutes, to be fair, for both of you.
I don't even want. I just want an answer to my question. We've been going long at this point. I don't even need 2 minutes. I just want to answer this question, and I don't care how many people said he's answered it. Anyone can go back and know he hasn't answered. Again, if the Palestinians, whether it be immediately or after a year or 2, they put in another group, I don't care how. If the Palestinians from the sovereign state of Palestine ignores that demilitarized order and they attack the sovereign state of Israel, would you accept that Israel says, okay, now we have really done everything, including what 186 countries have even asked us to do, and we are done? So would you accept Israel going in, pushing them out, and taking the land for themselves under the sovereign state of Israel? You have not answered that question. Would you accept that, yes or no, and why?
Would I accept that they have the right to occupy a land and take it for them because first? No, I don't accept that. I answered you. Have I not answered that?
It's not what
I asked. I
asked.
answered that 3-4 times, and you keep bringing it up. Dude, you keep. No, I don't accept it. I answered you very clearly.
Then you
now it's my
can't
turn to
even
ask.
get them to
Wait,
stop being
Ahmed,
terrorists.
are you
This
going to do the
proves my
2 minutes thing,
point.
or are you going to let me ask him the question? Because
all right, guys.
it seems
I'm
he's
gonna
asking the questions, and I'm.
Listen, I gotta be honest. I've
hold
said
on.
everything that I
Sorry,
wanted
I'm
to
muted
say.
right now.
He is proven.
And now I'm gonna put the 2 minutes, guys, back and forth. Have everyone your full chance. I'll be very strict. 2 minutes means 2 minutes. Put an iPad, a laptop, or something. You can time yourself and see if I'm fair or not. 2 minutes only. Now we're gonna hear from Dr. Oda. 2 minutes. We're gonna go to Nick. 2 minutes. Try not to repeat the same question. Everyone answer the question right now. 2 minutes starts for Dr. Oda in 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. So again, he keeps asking the question, Ahmed, and I keep giving him the fucking answer. Verbatim, yes and no, even to that degree. He's not satisfied, right? He doesn't want to answer my questions. I want to revisit, right? Because I really need to make this clear to everybody. And he just cannot take this and discuss this. The argument I'm making is that the two-state, and this is, I'm sorry, Ahmed, am I wrong? The title is, and the debate is the two-state solution dead or simply delayed, right? And he did not give me proof that it is dead. He did not give me another pathway that is actually more acceptable or in any discussions in international diplomacy, right? What he did was he said, listen, answer my question. Is this a problem or not? And then I say, yes, it is a problem, right? Yes, it is an obstacle, right? But that does not mean that it is dead. I agree that there are obstacles. The obstacles does not mean it's dead, right? The Soviet Union is dead. Yugoslavia is dead, right? The Palestinian statehood is not dead. It has obstacles, but it is not dead. And you know what will kill it is if you give me actually an alter argument that you can actually be, that can dwarf it and make it die. But you haven't even done that either, right? Every single obstacle that you mentioned is even solvable. The occupation, you asked me the occupation. Yeah, the occupation for security reasons for Israel, I'll give you that, no problem. But guess what? If the reason of occupation of the West Bank is merely for security reasons, then the security issue could be solved and occupation could be removed and dignity to the Palestinian people could be restored, right? So we do have a pathway. The solution is not dead. It's just sick. Now, you fail to give me an answer into what are the points that you can mention that can prove death of the solution, either by giving me a better solution or by giving me a wall that I can't go front of and making it impossible for the solution to happen. Go ahead.
3 seconds left for you, but okay. Go ahead, Nick. 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay, so he finally said no, he does not accept the Palestinians. If they attack, then Israel gets to go in, and because that's the last of the last options. That's what everyone asks for if they do it. And so he has said plenty. This is exactly my point. This is proving that it is dead. If he himself, the biggest proponent of this two-state solution or continued talks, if he can't even in his mind think that the Palestinians would not just attack Israel just like they did with Gaza when they left. They immediately started attacking Israel, and that was just a tiny little spot. That's just the Gaza Strip. They're doing this from Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, the state of Palestine, which would be a lot larger, a lot more capable. If he can't even in his mind think that they won't do it, then why the heck would Israelis ever accept that? Why are you convincing me? My point is, again, from my opening statement, sure, we can discuss stuff forever. This idea that you say, well, no one's discussing the Soviet Union, somebody tell that to Putin, because I'm pretty sure his argument for occupying certain parts of Ukraine and even a desire for more, he has even argued for that. Now, you can say it's not as talked about on the international court, but again, this kind of stuff happens all the time and changes. But I'm going to bring it back to what the topic actually is. My point from the very beginning, that the two-state solution is dead because it's not realistic. And I also never said just security. I said security was my most important aspect. Never said that was the only one. You still haven't answered. Also, since you said you've answered all these questions, what happens to the Temple Mount and the Kotel, the Western Wall? What happens to that? Because East Jerusalem as a capital, which I remember you saying in your opening statement, that would include putting that in the state of Palestine. Well, okay, but if that goes into the state of Palestine, that takes away that. I asked you, what would you think about splitting up Mecca? This is kind of like Solomon and the baby, right? The Palestinians are the mother that wants to cut the baby in half, and the Israelis are not. You don't cut the baby in half because you actually are the true mother. And this is interesting.
Time. Go ahead, Dr. Oda.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, the question that he mentioned that I didn't answer was never actually asked. The Mecca thing is a cartoonish, unrealistic, stupid question. Whether I think Mecca is Mecca disputed between two different peoples? I mean, what is this? Yani, this is you're really lowering down the discussion. You're like, should Mecca be? Are you comparing Mecca to the West Bank like this? I'm not sure. Did Saudi Arabia come into Mecca and find I don't know, Somalis and say, oh, Mecca is ours because the Prophet Muhammad was an Arab and God promised us Mecca 4,000 years ago? Either you bring me an analogy that as a serious one, or it's just cartoonish at this point, right? You fail to answer my questions. You keep saying it's unrealistic, right? You keep saying it's undoable. You're not telling me why, right? You're just telling me that political problems exist. You're telling me obstacles exist. I agree with that. That is not you telling me how the Palestinian statehood is dead, or the two-state solution is dead. If you want to give me another, again, Ahmed, if you want to give me another viable solution, then maybe that can help your argument that the two-state solution is dead. You haven't done that either, right? So when your turn comes, I would like you to answer these points and tackle these points. I would love if you do that, right? And again, you said, what happens to the Temple Mount? What happens to the Western Wall? What happens to Jerusalem? I mean, like this. Notice what these are. There are questions about the terms of an agreement, right? They are not positions of saying it is dead. It is terms of an agreement, right? We can discuss what could happen to the Temple Mount. We can discuss what happens to the Western Wall. We can discuss what we can do for Jerusalem. These could be fair questions, right? Even if they're difficult ones, right? But what they are questions about a term of an agreement. They are not proof that the agreement is impossible, right? Because throughout history, negotiations have proposed multiple arrangements for Jerusalem, and I think you can agree. There have been shared sovereignty, there have been special regimes, international guarantees, etc., 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 right? And Ahmed, just let me finish this point. Different like administrative arrangements, different laws. That's not the issue, right? These are terms of agreements, Nick. What you lack to do right now is get out of the term of agreement and tell me why we cannot have terms of agreement, why we cannot have a two-state solution. That's what you have failed to do, Yannick.
All right, Nick, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. We have to come back to 2 minutes. So you got 2 minutes, 20 seconds.
Okay, again, this idea is to show, he's right, this has been talked about before and it's been rejected every single time. And the only reason I even brought that up is because in his opening statement, early on in the debate at least, he said that East Jerusalem was a capital. So that would include that would include the Temple Mount. That would include the Jews' holiest site. So that's the only reason I brought it up. It wasn't cartoonish, it wasn't out of nowhere. But yeah, of course, if you're going to say East Jerusalem must be their capital, and that's the only thing they'll agree to, I agree with you. This has been discussed and it's been rejected every time. Once again, this is proving this is not realistic. Their ideology comes from Islamist radical ideology. And there are many Muslim states that have, rejected radical ideology, and they're trying to push away from that kind of stuff. And Palestinianism does not, and it's actually part of their entire culture. I'm saying that it's not realistic. And again, you actually subconsciously agree with me, because even you yourself cannot believe in a state of Palestine where they won't actually attack Israel. Because if you actually could guarantee that, and you actually did believe that, you would have had no problem answering my question with, of course I'd accept that, because then that means you would forever have a two-state solution. You'd forever have the state of Palestine. You have everything you're asking for in your argument, and it would never go away, because you truly believe that they will not attack. But you know they would, because that's what they've done every single time. This is not simply me just bringing up obstacles and problems. This is me bringing up why it's unrealistic. As for Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem to me is the eternal capital of the Jewish people. If I agree with that, someone who's not even Jewish, there's going to be a lot of people that agree with that as well. And they're never going to accept splintering. Again, this is why I brought up Solomon and the baby, right? They're never going to agree. Why? Because they're actually indigenous to that land, and that's the whole point, is that they are the mother that actually wants to not split the baby in half. You are proving that the Palestinians are people that would split the baby in half, even if you could get this through. And again, it's not realistic.
Okay. So, my opponent keeps saying that the two-state solution is unrealistic because he believes Palestinian, political culture and their leadership is like ideology that would not change. This is his prediction, and he's entitled to that. But a prediction is not proof that it has, it's not proof, right? Because the motion tonight is not, do you think a two-state solution is likely next year? That's not the discussion we're having here. It is, do you trust Palestinian leadership? It's not also, do you trust Palestinian leadership today? This is not the question that we have. Would you personally accept a Palestinian state tomorrow? Also, that's not the question that we have today. The motion is whether this two-state solution is dead. And I think my opponent has unintentionally maybe conceded something very important here today. He keeps saying that they will attack again. They will not reform. They will not change. They will not accept peace. This is his recurring argument, right? And notice that language. These are predictions about the future, okay? But if you are talking, and making predictions about what is possibly the future, then by definition you are acknowledging that the future has not happened yet, right? And if the future has not happened yet, Nick, then the possibility remains open. Then you may think the probability is low, right? But you may think the probability is extremely low. Even I'll give you that. But you may, that low probability is not the same thing as saying that it is impossible. I gave examples of real life things that happened, right? Jolani, everybody thought it was impossible. Somebody from the Nusra Front was on Al-Qaeda at one point, is now the leadership of Syria, and America, removed sanctions from him. Nick, you could never have, predicted that of happening. Guess what? It happened, right? Nobody would have predicted that Israel will give back the Sinai. Guess what? It fucking happened, right? Now, again, this is examples of low probability. It's not the same thing as impossibility. And I think that this distinction really matters enormously, because again, throughout history, people have made predictions, and and societies always do that. But many of those predictions, guess what, turn out to be wrong. Now, on the point of Jerusalem that you made, my opponent said that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish people. That's fine. I can respect that belief. Many Israelis share that. Can I, Nick, if you allow me just to point out the Jerusalem thing so you don't claim that I didn't answer you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You can get extra time if that's fine with you, Nick.
Yeah.
All right. So many Palestinians, again, many Israelis share that belief. Oh, it's our eternal capital, whatever. But guess what? Many Palestinians have equally strong beliefs about East Jerusalem as well. I can make that same argument, right? So this is why precisely Jerusalem is, again, and I would talk to you about that, is a difficult subject. But difficult is not death yet, Nick, right? Difficult, right. The fact that people disagree about Jerusalem does not prove that the agreement is impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, simply, I would just say, first off, when you said I would not predict that kind of stuff, yeah, not thinking about it at all, which nobody really even thought about what was going to necessarily happen in that sense of Syria. It's not the same thing as like, oh, that means the impossible can become possible. It's just nobody was thinking about it. Nobody was talking about it. But sure. I didn't even really honestly know much about Al-Jilani until he became like in the news. So it's just not something I would have thought about. Yeah, I think we should start moving towards closing statements even, because at this point we're just kind of we're just circling around each other, and my overall argument again is just he's kind of proving that it's not realistic by saying stuff like, oh, these are all just problems and you never can predict the future, so therefore it's never going to be dead. I mean, yeah, of course I can't predict the future. I'm not like psychic, but that's not an argument. That's not a realistic argument. Pattern recognition is important. Pattern recognition is my argument, and so this idea with to just kind of close up this idea that the Palestinians will never accept. I'm not just arguing because you said that I said that, oh, Palestinians are always going to be like this. It's not even just the Palestinians. It will never pass the Knesset, and you cannot force that. It will never get 81 votes splitting up Jerusalem alone, let alone splitting up the land, possibly removing maybe some settlements. I know you said not all, but some. It'll never get 81 votes. So I'm not even just talking about just the Palestinians. I'm talking about even just the Israelis and security. And again, even you've admitted that you can't actually guarantee that the Palestinians won't be violent even in the near future after a second state. And why should you? I actually don't blame you. The Palestinians have done it every single time. And like I said, autonomy has come. The more autonomy the Palestinians have been given, the more violence they have done, the more terrorism they have done every single time. Not some of the times, not 50% of the time, not even 90%, every single time. And they have a culture, and by the way, I don't even disagree with it in the Middle East. They have a culture that even coming to the agreement table, they see as weak. All right, let me just say this one sentence real quick. Even Camp David of 78, when they did that, you started to see more terrorist attacks by the Arabs in Israel because they saw it as weak. But I think we should go to closing statements. I mean, we're kind of just saying the same things back and forth at this point.
Dr. Hoza, you cool with that? I want to continue.
It's also just 2 a.m. where I'm at.
I kind of want answers to my questions.
Yeah.
Ahmed.
Okay.
Ahmed,
all right. I guess before the closing statement, how about Q&A? So start off with your Q&A, 1 minute each. So
can I talk for 1 second, please? Yeah. I kind of want answers to my question, Ahmed, because again, you have to see that I think I would like 2 more rounds so I can we can pinpoint why he's not answering. I think my point reduced the arguments to 2 claims, okay? First, the 2-state solution will never pass the Knesset, okay? All right, good. Second, the Palestinians cannot be trusted with statehood because violence may continue, okay? Let's take both of those seriously, okay? Now, again, see how I'm answering all of his points. I wish that he would do the same. First point, my opponent said that it will never get 81 votes. Like, whether you're right or not, today's Knesset is not tomorrow's Knesset, and the motion is not about what today's Knesset say. The motion is not about the Knesset. The motion is whether the 2-state solution is dead or not. Again, I gave you examples, and this is the point, Ahmed, I want you to emphasize here. I keep saying that government, I gave him the example of Jolani. He doesn't want to tackle it. How governments change, how people, at one point, did we not all consider, did not the whole world say this guy's a terrorist? He's in Al-Qaeda. There's no way he's going to rule Syria. Who rules Syria today? It is him. So don't come to me and say the politics of today means that the two-state solution is dead. It doesn't mean that. A dead two-state solution has criteria for it to be dead, right? Soviet Union is dead, right? The idea of a one India is dead. The idea of a Yugoslavia is dead, right? Bosnia and Herzegovina is a country that gives you an example of a solution. The giving back of the Sinai land for peace is an example of a solution, right? There are so many examples of solutions, many examples of where what you presume as predictions of it, never going to happen, and you're wrong. Jolani happened, right? Peace happened between Egypt and Israel that nobody thought it would happen. So I don't know why you don't want to answer that and you don't want to tackle that issue. I kind of do know why though. But again, governments change, coalitions change. But again, I'm gonna end it here. I think, but I do want other rounds until he can answer this question, Ahmed, if you guys are okay with it. I think every peace agreement in history, guys, it does involve risk. Every peace agreement was signed without certainty, right? No one can guarantee the absolute future. Not me, not you, Nick, not Ahmed. No one can do that. But the question is whether that uncertainty, Nick, right, that future makes a two-state solution impossible. And the answer is clearly no. Because uncertainty existed, as I gave examples. Jolani broke that, theory. Peace with Egypt broke that theory. And you don't want to tackle it. You don't want to discuss it. Ahmed, do you have more time?
Right about time, to be honest.
All right, go
So,
ahead.
all right, Nick, we need some answers before this.
Yeah, I already answered about this, but to go further on, Jolani, under his government, Jews are being slaughtered, Christians are being slaughtered, and they actually want to secede from the government. So yeah, not a good example, but I also don't really care because Syria is not Israel. Syria is not the Palestinian territories. Egypt is not Israel. I already said earlier in the debate that peace very clearly is around the Palestinians, not through the Palestinians, and that has been proven throughout all of history. You're right, we cannot read the future, but we can look at history, and history is siding with every argument that I have made, not yours. And so that is very clearly my indication. You also cannot read the future. I can't. That's totally fair statement because it's obviously true. But we can read history, and again, the history has stand with every single thing I've said, and it has disagreed with every single thing you have said in this entire debate. And so we are on equal terms when it comes to reading the future. Neither of us can do it, right? So if history stands on my side and goes against you, and we're on equal terms with the future, then the argument is exactly what I'm saying, that it is unrealistic. I don't give a shit about Jolani, who is doing a terrible job and is causing people to want to secede from his state, and the Christians are being slaughtered, and the Druze are being slaughtered. I don't give a shit about Egypt. I do not care. It is not Israel. It's completely different. It's a unique situation that doesn't even exist in Syria. It does not exist in Egypt. It doesn't exist anywhere in the entire world. As for
Okay. Nick, okay, but give us another solution. Is it just going to be continuing occupation and settlements for the next 1,000 years until Judgment Day? If the two-state solution is not the solution, then what the hell?
Again,
how
the
can you
claim,
fix this
yeah,
chaos?
the argument is not what is the solution. The argument is the two-state solution is dead, right? I would accept many other things. I do not care for you guys to try to change the subject, to try to get me into a corner of what is the solution. I have said what should happen.
No, Dr. Hood, that was one of his points. He's like, okay, if it's the two-state solution is dead, you need to kill it with another solution that could be viable. And you haven't presented any of that so far.
Yeah, one-state
solution for the Jews only and the 2 million Arab Muslim Israelis. What about the 2 million Gazans that you guys failed to displace? What about literally, for example, the people that live in?
Yeah, I've already given the answer. Just because you guys don't like the answer does not mean I haven't given this answer. You can say that it's not a good one. I don't accept it.
I hold my personal opinion. I'm just reading the questions from Dr. Hoda. If you want to present your own questions, but I believe Dr. Hoda answered it, so you get the point. It's the same questions that we're kind of
yeah.
Really
Again, I have.
You're saying you're not answering the question of you not giving us a viable solution to claim that the two-state solution is dead, which is we saw evident in this discussion.
Yeah, again, I have already answered it. Again, you guys saying you don't like it and you're calling it not viable. I know I've answered it because you guys.
Can you repeat it? Can you repeat it? Can you repeat it, please?
No, because you've repeated it multiple times, right? I said that they have.
Why are you refusing to repeat your solution? Many people just came to this space. They want to hear the solution. Give us.
Wait, hold on, Doctor. Ask the question. Hold on, ask the question one more time.
You guys, it is
because there's new people in this space.
2:10 in the morning. Okay, I have answered this multiple times, right? The Palestinians have to decide some stuff for themselves, and they need to do way more than meet halfway, because they have been the biggest obstacle, because peace has been made around them multiple times, but it has never been made through them. They need to do much more. I have answered this multiple times. For those that are just entering at the end of the conversation, they can listen to the recording. Okay, I have answered this multiple times. You guys know I've answered it, because again, you didn't say, Nick, you didn't answer it. You said you didn't answer it with a viable option. I don't care what you think is viable, because I also equally clearly made it clear that the two-state solution is not viable in what you're saying. Right, but we're in equal terms here.
Can I?
All right, hold on. Let us go to Dr. Huda. Go ahead.
Yeah. So again, for the people that didn't listen, so what he just said is that the Palestinians have to get their shit together. That's a solution that will basically alternate. That is the solution that he would alternate the two-state solution. You can call it what you want. They have to figure it out. They have to fix their issues. That's not a solution. Okay. So what you said earlier, which is different than what you just said now, your earlier solution was a 3-point solution. You called it Nazareth, Jordan, and Gaza, right? You said that either the Palestinians, right, get the hell out of Palestine and go to either Jordan or wherever the hell they want to. That's the Jordan one. The Nazareth one is either they, which I called be a good guy. You said that's not what you meant. Fine, it's okay. Assimilate completely and, be, assimilated, right? And go through what, just seems to me some kind of utopian re-education camp like the Uyghurs or some Chinese shit.
You never said anything about a camp.
I know you never said that. I'm saying that the way to that is something similar to that in my understanding. I never said you said that. Please
you're just adding stuff.
Ahmed, have I interrupted him? I don't know. Please control the panel.
Let Dr. Huda finish.
Thank you. So I'm going to repeat it again. Ahmed, I would like my time. So the solution that he mentioned was the Gaza, Nazareth, and the Jordan. Jordan being get the hell out of my country, that your ancestors lived for thousands of years. The next one was the Nazareth, which is assimilate, right? And a lot of question marks around what he actually means. And the last one is the Gaza one, which is if you're a terrorist, I'm going to kill you, right? And his definition of a terrorist is very much scary. And I agree, terrorists should get justice, on them. But for him to say you are either one of three, get the hell out, come into my education camps and assimilate, or I kill you, is not really a solution that is an alternative to the two-state solution. Then he said, no, actually, my solution to my alternative to the two-state solution is the Palestinians get their shit together, right? I mean, that's not even I don't know what the hell that means. Finally, I want to now point out something very important here. And I'll give him that. I do agree that there are many failed negotiations in history. There are many security failures in history, right? And, I have never denied that, right? But history does not tell one story. I have brought up, right, the example of al-Jolani, right, where people declared it impossible right up until it happened, right up until Jolani came into power. Nobody thought that, that quote unquote, what they claim Al-Qaeda guy would come into power. But guess what? He is in power now. And guess what?
It's been 2 minutes.
And guess what? America removed sanctions from it too. So the problem with using, his history as proof of impossibility is that history records both failures. No, Ahmed, if I'm taking more time, give me the time. It's Ahmed. It's okay. I want to continue and give him the extra time, Ahmed.
No, I don't.
All right.
Jesus,
so the problem with
using.
God. Look, listen.
Wait, Nick, are you okay with that?
Do you mind? Dude, it's 2:50 in the morning. So we're just saying the same stuff. I'm gonna finish.
Let him wrap up, please. Let him just wrap up. Okay?
Sure, go ahead.
No, because I have to make this point, Yannick.
Where
again you keep claiming that the political it's impossible to happen, and I gave you examples of historical things that proved you wrong. Jolani was impossible until it happened. Giving back the Sinai was impossible until it happened.
Yes,
right?
I've heard this.
So your argument. Dude, I didn't interrupt you. You can take all the time you want. Your argument of impossibility does not hold. That's not an argument. Your alternative for a two-state solution is cartoonish. It's not an alternative. I have a two-state solution of 182 countries that do admit of a two-state solution is the only pathway to peace, right? It's not just me and you. It's 182 governments of the world, right? None of them say the Palestinians should gather their shit together. None of them says your plan of, either go back to Jordan, die, or fucking be a good guy. I mean, give us good arguments. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Again, I'm closing up because it's now hitting 2:30 in the morning. So the reason we know that my solution actually is somewhat viable is because if it wasn't, he wouldn't have to feel the need. And again, I challenge everyone to go listen to the recording on what I said. Everything he said I said was at very best hyperbolic or straight out lies. If what I was saying was so monstrous and wrong, then please somebody answer. This is a rhetorical question, don't interrupt. But please somebody answer why he felt the need to change it. If what I said was bad enough, then just say what I said. The fact that he had to change is because he knows it's not bad enough, so he had to make it worse by adding in all this stuff. Never said anything about a camp, never said anything about a good goy. And by the way, he said my definition of a terrorist is scary. Again, challenge everyone to go back into the recording. What I said was those that attack Israel and commit terrorism.
Please do return
That's
to the
what
I have not lied. Listen, Nick, I don't appreciate you claiming I'm lying.
Here we go.
Hold on, hold on.
The goy thing, I never claimed you said it. That's my description of what you want, right? A good goy.
Hold on, Doctor. Let him finish, please.
Right? Anyways, so yeah, that's what I define as a terrorist. So when he said Nick's definition of terrorist is scary, if he agrees with that, if what's scary is defined as terrorist by somebody that commits terrorism and attacks the state of Israel, undermine it, then he's proving my point. In fact, he actually changed my mind a little bit. Now I don't trust any of the fucking Arabs because I thought this guy was actually somewhat moderate, and he's telling me that it's scary to define terrorists as people that attack Israel and do terrorism. I believe him, and now I am done.
Come on, Nick.
I am done. No,
Come
he
on,
proved
Nick.
my point. He proved my point. Never mind. I was actually here because I was told by multiple people, including some Jews, hey, this guy is actually in good faith.
Is he saying that? What is he saying?
Wait, Nick, if he's not like moderate,
if his idea is defining,
I don't know why this is personal.
It's not. No, it's not dude. I am not mad at you. I have
but
no
Nick,
problems
if he's
with
not,
you.
I don't
if he's
care
not
if you are,
moderate,
but I just don't want. Yeah.
Okay, I have to finish. Okay, I have to be able to finish.
Yeah. Okay. Give him his 6 minutes. Go ahead.
I don't need 6 minutes. I'm just simply saying if what you're saying is true and you agree, right? What you said, and I quote, Nick's definition of terrorist is scary. Well, if that's what's scary, then how the hell can we ever make peace? Because that is exactly what I said. If anyone want to go back in the recording, that's what I said the definition of terrorist was. And if he thinks that's scary, then geez, what else does he think? Never said anything about camps. Also, by the way, and again, go back to the recording, I challenge everyone, all I asked for when he talks about these re-education camps, good goy, quote unquote, all I asked for was for them to take out of their, one more sentence, for them to take out of their books that talks about, and I gave a real world example, I wasn't even being hyperbolic, to take out about killing Jews. If he is hearing that and he's turning it into re-education camps, good goy, then that's scary. That's super scary for him to say that.
I mean, it's literally from both sides, because I don't think like the Israelis are complimenting the Palestinians.
It doesn't matter if it's from both sides, because he just said that. It doesn't matter if it's from both sides. But that being said,
but
listen,
Nick,
it's
can
2:30.
you said, I know, I'm sorry, okay. But for example, you said that he kept on lying in a few points. Can you repeat them? Because he needs to reply to that.
I did say them. He said that I said something about re-education camps. Never said that. He admitted he was being hyperbolic with a good goy, but I never said that. I never said anything about what was the other one? Oh yes, the definition of terrorism and all that. I also never said, I didn't have this, but I never said anything about their getting their shit together. I was just paraphrasing what I said earlier. I'm still talking about the 3 points. So yeah, it just, again, I never said any of this stuff.
You did say get their shit together, and you get Ahmed. I'm just waiting for my chance. I don't want to interrupt him. I don't want to interrupt him.
I said that as a paraphrase, but I'm just clarifying.
Okay, so then why are you crying that I paraphrase your paraphrase? Like, dude, just relax.
No,
anyway,
I'm not.
Can I Ahmed, my chance now, please?
Okay, hold on. Nick,
can we close?
No,
This is supposed to be an hour long. It's gone on for 2.5 hours.
Sadly, it's really extended. Let's just hear from Dr. Hoda, because I need to agree that this debate ended. I can't be from one side. You get the point? Dr. Hoda, go ahead. We're gonna like.
There's some things I don't appreciate. He said that I lied. Everybody can go back and listen. I don't know what he claims that he lied. He did in fact say that, and I'm quoting him. He said the solution to the Palestinian issue is what he calls the Gaza, the Nazareth, and the Jordan, right? The Jordan being they leave if they don't want to be here and if they don't want to assimilate, right? According to what his standards is to assimilation. Number 2, assimilate. Now, when I said, assimilate meaning be a good goy, that's my comment. I never said that you said that, right? Why are you gaslighting? I'm saying that to me, that looks like, it's my opinion, I have a right to my opinion, looks like you're saying, be a good goy, assimilate, get the hell out. Or third, and I quote, like the terrorists in Gaza, die. So your options are 3.
You also
get
said
out, go back to
camps.
Jordan, assimilate. I didn't interrupt, Ahmed. Please, you have to. This is not.
Okay, hold on,
actually. Go ahead, Dr. Hoda, please.
Thank you. So again, I don't know why you're getting riled up. This is your argument. Like, I'm not changing it. I never lied. You are accusing me of lying. I'm the one that should be upset here. You said that the alternative to the 2-state solution is this. The Gaza, Jordan, Nazareth thing. Jordan being, please don't interrupt me. Please don't interrupt me.
I didn't
Mute
say
your mic, please.
anything.
No. I would appreciate if you mute your mic. I don't want your ifs and offs. Please let me continue. Thank you. So the three things that are the alternative to two-state solution, according to Nick, is one, get the hell back to Jordan, right? Two, assimilate, which I called, not you, I called be a good guy. Three, if you're a terrorist in Gaza, die. This is verbatim what he said. Now, I don't know where I lied, right? Being a good goy is my comment. I never said that you said it. So stop gaslighting because, you don't have a real good solution to the question I offered you. Number two is, again, you claiming that predictability of the future, right? Obstacles that we have today means that it can never happen and the Palestinian solution, the Palestinian state is dead, is wrong, right? Because again, obstacles does not mean it's dead. And again, you can't predict the future by saying that we have obstacle, hence it is dead. Because I gave you the example of Jolani. Nobody thought Jolani will come into power. The obstacles in front of Jolani being a quote unquote, what people would say, a terrorist in Al-Qaeda, right? Nobody would have thought that he would, regain Syria and get sanctions removed from him, right? Being a guy wanted by the United States. Who would have imagined that, right? So when you say something is impossible, you have to prove it's impossible. And one of the things, and actually the best argument you can make to prove it's impossible, is when you can give me an alternative solution, which you have failed to do. Your solution, in my opinion, is absolutely cartoonish, right? And it's nobody discusses it. Nobody even brought it up. 182 countries in the world, including your country, the United States, hold the two-state solution as the framework for the peace, for the region, right? Now, are there obstacles? Absolutely. I've never denied it. Is there problems to it? Absolutely. I didn't deny it. But all of these are negotiations, right? And discussions that we can take under the framework of a two-state solution, you see? So hence, the two-state solution is not dead. Thank you.
All right, go Nick. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Yeah, so in his attempt to say that I never lied, he changed some of the things. He forgot to add that he said something about re-education camps and that I said that. I never said that. He also said that I said...
I never said you said that. I said that this is how it looks like to me.
Already.
Don't interrupt him. Dr. Oda, don't interrupt him. Nick, go ahead.
Anyways, what I said, again, anyone can go to the very beginning. What I said was that can they just take out of their books stuff like, and I gave the example of 3 Molotov cocktails to 5 Jews, how many more Molotov cocktails you take, you need, which is an actual real world example, okay? That's what I said, and he's turning that into, it sounds like re-education camps to me. Again, this guy is the moderate. If he thinks this way, this is proving my point. He then goes on and says, yeah, Nick, okay, you did offer a solution, but your solution is just cartoonish to me. I just don't think it'll work. We're literally on the same page. So if you're saying that that's good enough, right, that it won't work because I said it, that's exactly what I think about the two-state solution. But I find it interesting that you get to say that excuse and I don't, right? Or I don't get to say it. It's the same thing. I also think yours is cartoonish. As for your example of the fallacy of popularity, right, which is what you're doing. Well, so many people say this, including your own country. Great. When you debate them, talk to them about it. You're not debating them, you're debating me. I don't give a shit if 8 billion people in the world think it's a good solution. Until you convince me, I don't care. I'm going to not debate it just because other people think it. And that's the point. You're debating me and you have not convinced me even a little bit. In fact, you even conceded to some of the points about how, yeah, you don't really trust them not to attack again. That says a lot. When I define terrorism as somebody who's a terrorist that attacks the state of Israel, and you say that's a scary definition, that says a lot. And you're not even Palestinian. And so, yeah, I don't really need the rest of the time. I think I've said what I had to say at this point. We're just kind of going in circles.
All right. I guess, Dr. Hoda, do you want to have the last thing, or should we just go with the mics? There's a lot of people.
Yeah, we can do both. Listen, he keeps, I don't know why he makes this a personal thing. When I said the education camps, nobody ever said that you said the education camps. I'm saying my understanding of it seems like an education camp. When you say you want to assimilate them under your standards, what it comes to me and seems to me is like an education camp. Now, this is my opinion. I have every right to see it that way and describe it the way I would like to. You gaslighting and claiming that, Ahmed, can you mute his mic because it's really giving an echo?
It's not me.
It's actually mine.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So when he keeps saying that I claimed, he said I never said that. I'm just giving my opinion. I have every right to look at it any way I would want to. To me, what you said is very similar to what people claim the Uyghurs have in China, which I don't think is actually the fact, right? You want to assimilate people by educating them under your standards. I don't accept that in the way you want. And what you consider a moderate and what not a moderate, that's your opinion. I really don't. I don't know why you keep personalizing it about me. Let's stick to the subject of whether the two-state solution is dead or not. You kind of, deflect from that. And I think, again, the point about Jolani, he did try, but he didn't really give me a good answer to it. And the example of an alternative to the two-state solution, he didn't really give one. I think my opinion, again, and I have right to the opinion, the fact that you claim that either you get the hell out to Jordan or assimilate through education of your standards, or die in Gaza, the way you said it, terrorists, the way you said it, right, is a solution. It's just laughable to me. It is cartoonish to me, right? This is my opinion, again. So I'm entitled to that. Now, what I did today is I have offered you a framework of a two-state solution that obviously needs fixing. There's our obstacles, there are concessions, there are a lot of issues. I never denied that, right? But what I deny is the idea that Palestinian statehood is dead. That motion is silly to me, because when you have 182 countries in the world that claim a two-state solution is the way, when your country, your American country, claims a two-state solution is the way, right? Then the idea of saying it's dead is really funny to me, right? Is there political will? No, there isn't enough political will. I do say, yeah, I agree. But not having political will does not equal the Palestinian statehood being dead, right? And I never said Palestinian statehood should happen today. I never said that, the solution could be this way. I think that concessions should be made and a solution could be made. That gives you the proof that the two-state solution is in fact not dead, but has obstacles. Thank you.
All right, Nick, Dr. Hoda, thank you guys so much. That's about it.
Let's
Nick, if you
have
wanna,
people jump in. Yeah.
yeah, let me accept some people. I'll accept everyone. I don't know any of them besides Zico.
I do find it curious that
This was.
if he went
What's
first,
up?
why did he go last? But it's fine. I want to go.
All right, go ahead. You have the last
That's
talk.
fine. That's fine.
Go ahead. You have the right, Nick.
I insist you have the last chance. Go ahead.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, we have
Go
an
ahead.
absolute Israeli panel now. That's wonderful. Go ahead.
Maybe it's because some of the
I just
Palestinians,
I
they
just
don't
wanted
talk.
to, but I don't. I'm just. This is a rhetorical question, because if I ask, it's gonna go off on another 5-minute rant. Honestly, I was just gonna say that I wonder what it is that I said that made him think, because he said, I'm just thinking it sounds like a re-education camp. I wonder what I said that made him think that was, because what I very clearly said, and again, everyone can go listen to the recording, I said not only do I not want it at Israel's necessarily standards, right, as long as there's a removal of terroristic thought and push for that in the education of their books, but I want them to implement it to even prove, and I said this like 2 or 3 times, so everyone can go hear me say it. I said I want them to implement it to even prove that they can govern their own people. So I wonder what I said that made him think re-education camps. But
so in essence, you do agree to a two-state solution, that the Palestinians can have
No, I do
statehood.
not.
Hence, the two-state solution is not dead, since you're attacking the argument.
No,
Yeah.
not just like you
You
said.
just
it's
said
a
that. You need them to prove
no,
it.
No. What I said is under
Yeah.
your
What's
logic, they
cartoonish
need
about
to, right? Well, I just the last 3 hours I've already made this clear, right? But I don't agree to it. I'm saying under your logic. That's the joke, but never mind.
Yeah. You think your solution is a better solution than the two-state solution 182 countries think is the most
I
viable
think the
option?
two-state solution is dead,
What?
which is what the claim is.